for the Jason Momoa look.
Yeah, yeah. I need to bulk up and thin up.
Yep.
So yeah, we are recording now. So yeah, we're talking about my sweet mullet as we get started, and it's been a while since we've done one of these. Obviously, this is not live because I just didn't want to do it live. We're going to be talking about Dune 2D20, more specifically our campaign, the Rite of Kanly, and with me today is Cypher, who is back to play this game. And yeah, have you got anything to say today?
Hello. It's good to be back. We've been waiting for this game for quite some time, almost what, 2 years? 2 years, I think.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, longer than that, probably.
Yeah,
We were talking about it before this system even was announced, right? How we wanted a
correct.
Dune game, and we are kind of like, what system should we use? We talked about Swan a bit and other things, and we just had things going on, and
Correct.
actually, you were going to run it, so we're waiting
Yes,
for CP to end
and
before we did
and then
that.
CP did end in
It
a
did end.
spectacular way,
Hmm.
in a spectacular way.
So
And
yes,
after a
yeah. So.
2 year hiatus,
Hmm.
and we're back.
Yep.
You know.
So I'm going to run it, which is
Yes.
fine. And we have a cast of 6 characters probably. I didn't want to get real huge because the problem with that, when you do that, you struggle to get everybody the games that you think they probably need, to be invested in the game. And I find that to be a problem if you just do huge games, which is. I don't mind having huge games, but that's the problem. It's like I can't ever get everybody, 2 sessions usually. So
Correct.
I think that's really kind of the minimum you need a month to be invested in a game. So uh,
And I think all the players and you envisioned the game is it was going to be more heavy RP,
mhm.
right? So when you have that, having a larger group of players, then it's hard to get uh, everybody a chance to voice because the conversation ends up being free flowing, and then people don't want to like as players want to interject someone while they're RPing and yeah. So I think yeah,
Mhm.
this game would predominantly RP heavy is what everybody's expecting it to be. So a lot of talking, and then even the mechanics is going to be surrounded around talking, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah, a lot
and
of it will.
and
Yeah, it's going to be split up in. So some people might have a clue about what this game is, have read it or whatever. But there's 2 modes of play basically. It's architect play, which is kind of like the people who sit back and move the chess pieces around, that sort of thing. And then there's agent play, which I equate to a more similar, role playing game experience. You go out, you do things, you take care of tasks, either whatever that might be, right? I think that's very standard stuff. Whereas we're going to focus a lot, I'd say probably 80/20, let's say, on kind of the architect play where you're kind of developing your schemes, you're making roles with the assets that you have and that your house has to see how those things like set up, and then you have a sometimes you'll have a definitive thing that you have to do, and then you do asset play to see do they succeed about this,
right.
or how
A good
well or how
example,
good.
yeah, a good example would be, in the book, when the Atreides go into Dune, they do know that the Harkonnens have been stockpiling spice, right, on their home planet, and they actually end up. It's kind of alluded to. They don't put a lot of like text behind it, but the Atreides do end up having a commando unit go to Gidi Prime and actually destroy it. It actually affects the Harkonnens pretty badly, which causes them to even go after Aragorn and Dune from a perspective of collecting spice. They finally get it back even harder because they just blew the whole stockpile was blown by the Atreides commandos. So
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So something like that, that would be a perfect
Hmm.
example of a agent play. Uh,
Yep. Or like I know Duncan wouldn't be necessarily an agent, but him going out into the desert to find Fremen, stuff like that,
Correct, correct, correct. And I think like from the way when you go look at the character building aspect, like the agents are not really like minor characters; they themselves can be major
Hmm.
characters. So they have a lot of power, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing I realized while building the characters is they have a lot of power. It's not unlike most role-playing games. You don't start like a level one and you're leveling up through, through different
Mm-hmm.
zones. Like the whole concept is not like leveling. It's all about like what schemes you can run and how you can manifest those schemes into fruition um, through your agents.
Mm-hmm.
So agents are also pretty powerful. They're not like some low-level characters you're just playing through to roll dice mechanics.
Yeah, you get there are technically three different types of characters. There's normal characters, and there's I think they're called notable characters and minor characters, right? I feel that the notable characters are just kind of like your run of the mill NPCs, and your minor characters are unnamed people, right?
Hmm.
Mostly.
Hmm.
Now, I have made like many NPCs already, and a lot of them are actually full character builds because a lot of times when you use something like a notable character or minor character, it's because you don't want to take the time to build a full character for whatever you're doing. But honestly, once you know what you're doing, when you create a character in this system, it takes like 5 to 10 minutes.
Exactly.
It's not difficult, especially if you kind of. I mean, the hardest part is like, oh, what are my focuses? What are my drive statements? And what are my talents? Just deciding those things. But how you do
Correct.
it, I mean, is just you can go through the talents and take an hour looking at all the talents and reading them. But that stuff is inconsequential for people. You're like, well, does it do something simple? You can by the name you can kind of figure it out, and you just pick one, whatever.
Correct. Correct.
So yeah.
And then I think the other thing is like they will be, I wouldn't call it PvP, but the players will be scheming against each other as well, which is a
Mm-hmm.
pretty central concept to Dune in itself. Is there are plans within plans. And another great example is in the book where Tufir Hawat suspects Jessica as the spy, with the information that he has access to. He proposes this to the Duke. The Duke does not believe it for once, but he lets it play out because he wants to use that tension and that mistrust that it's creating to whoever else is watching them, hoping for them to take the step, so it puts the enemy in some complacent mode, right? The enemy thinks that these people are distrusting each other, my plan is working. All along, the Duke doesn't believe Jessica uh, uh, is the traitor or the spy, but he wants to let it play out. But he also cannot tell her because he wants her reactions to be natural, not affected or put on, which somebody could read.
Mm-hmm.
um, so yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of like off air through Discord, back channel talks with Tet and other different players who are scheming against each other for whatever various ends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So an example of my character, just to put it out there, like Ashir, who's the brother to Alaric Weistrom. He believes that if his brother, who's the ruler, can't keep ahead of Ashir's machinations, then how is he going to keep ahead of other houses, right? Like, so somebody's got to keep you on your toes for you to be able to be ahead of the game on other people, right? So um, it's one of those things. It's just different layers of plans within plans within plans. That's what we're trying to like emulate and make it happen in this,
Yeah.
which is very different. So
Yeah, it's going to be
we're not,
interesting.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And we've continued to kind of develop how the house is, and I've been trying to layer on as many complications as I can without it being kind of silly, um, and being more natural and that could work, right? Like, what's an example? Well, okay, so the house is House Weistrom, and this is based on what domains they chose a while ago. They chose an industrial, so industrial, and produce is the because you have two things. It's like what's the industry and what does it do? What does it actually produce? Well, produce is you produce something of that industry, so fuel in this case. Um, so we kind of came up with a thing for spice isn't the fuel for Guild Highliners necessarily. It's just how they fold space, but they have to move around some other way when they're in real space. So we said, what about the fuel for those, or like a more efficient fuel? So that's what that is. And then they wanted to do kind of an espionage network with a bunch of whorehouses. Of course, this is B&B, so it's going to be something like that. So, so that's their secondary domain, and they have a pretty impressive spy network to kind of rival the Bene Gesserits. Well, Slip's character is a Bene Gesserit, so she's coming there for reasons, you know, the only Bene Gesserits know, and I know, and she knows. Well, that puts a lot of tension on, well, can this Bene Gesserit's here, who's my consort now, should I give her information about this massive espionage ring we have? She's a Bene Gesserit. She might find out anyway. She might already know anyway. That sort of thing. So that's all that PvP aspect. And when we talk about
Yeah, yeah,
PvP, it's not necessarily killing each other, right? Because that's not that interesting. Maybe it'll happen, but like,
yeah. But it'll happen naturally if it has to. But it's more about you are not like all of us are not like kumbaya, like hands locked with each other, swinging around and singing the praise of of you know uh, of the emperor. But
mm-hmm,
yeah, in the sense like yeah, everybody's goals may not most likely will not be always aligned, and how do we move about each other while we are getting our own goals executed upon. So and the thing is, as always, when role play or any game goes through, the longer you play with each other, the longer you associate with each other, then you end up getting embroiled with each other's plans, and then you can't like get yourself out of it, can't extricate yourself out of it. So um so it's just yeah, one of those things like, oh, you got associated with those guys, you must be one of them, right? Like
mm-hmm,
because this is the Imperium after all. Humans as a raw material, there's billions upon billions of humans on umpteen number of planets. It's not like you're some special, unless you're the Reverend Mother, which you're not.
mm-hmm.
You're just one Bene Gesserit sister. You're just one minor house. You're just one heir. Um, so yeah, it's the scale is large. I think that's the other thing. The scale is large. Like even as a house, even as a minor house, you have a lot of resources. So um, it's interesting that way. It's uh, it's like your schemes are like grandiose in many ways. It's not like something small that you're trying to achieve. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I have a handout with like probably 20 plot points. Like, this might this is what they're trying to do. This is what they're trying to do. Just from your house alone. So there's a lot of things you guys can focus on, and a lot of it's not going to be, I might move a set piece there for you guys to react to, but what you guys do and how you drive the game is going to be completely up to you, and then I'll just react
React
to it.
accordingly. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I think something else like if people have watched the movie, the new movie, and I mean the old movie kind of reference to it, but it's just it was 84, so things were not as uh, suave and sophisticated back then as they are today. Um, is like through RP, and so the role playing of the character, but the narration as a player of the characters like thoughts or outlook or whatever. It'll be interesting to also put into play things like oh, we have a secret sign language, and I'm signing certain things to my brother, or we have a different language, and maybe I'm DMing him
hmm
behind the scenes that this is what's happening, right?
yeah, I'm
You would
guessing there will be
also
some of that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and then sometimes you are role playing in a specific way, which is kind of you know opposite to what your actions you're trying to intend, because you want to like show something and do something else, right? Like,
hmm
so you might be in some at some dinner party, and you might be behaving boorishly, like, so my character might be behaving boorishly, which is kind of weird for a for an heir of a house, but there might be reason to get somebody else to react in a particular way. Again, I call out, like, if people have read the book or they want to refresh their memory, the entire dinner scene between Duke, Lady Jessica, her son Paul, and then the guild banker, the water supplier, or the water,
Hmm.
what's the
Are
name?
you? I don't know what his name is, but are you talking about Count Fenring? I don't
No, no,
think
no,
he's
not
there.
Penguin.
No.
No, no, not in that dinner. So this is the
Are you talking
dinner
about where
where it's
Duncan
the
gets drunk? Like
yeah.
gets
This is
really
just
drunk?
before Duncan. Yeah, this is before Duncan
Hmm.
gets drunk. Yeah, this is the dinner scene where the Duke, the Lady Jessica, set up this dinner with the guild banker, who's basically a Harkonnen agent,
Hmm.
against the water baron. His name is Bates, or
Yeah.
Butte, the water baron Butte. So it's very interesting because they're all baiting each other into behaving one way or the other, right? The guild banker wants to kind of upstage Paul and the Duke. He wants to put Late Kynes, the person of the exchange, in the spot. He's going to put the water baron in the spot, kind of expose them for their machinations. So yeah, so stuff like that. Sometimes you might behave one way to get some other outcome. So that's also really cool to kind of role play out. Mm.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of interesting things going on. I mean, I think the three most fleshed out characters are obviously you, Walter Peck, and Slip, and so
Mm.
you have a ruler, Walter Peck, playing the newish ruler of the house, fairly young in his 50s or so, which in this game is young because the spice prolongs your life several centuries. So just to keep that in mind. But and then his younger brother Zypher here, and the new concubine that will arrive, who will be Slip. And the dynamic of the gist, the obvious on the surface stuff is that Walter Peck's wife appears to be barren. And so he or someone has commanded him, perhaps his major house or the great house, commanded him to take a concubine so he can produce an heir, fearing perhaps internal strife, which is not good. Um, we have a commodity that's not nearly as important as something like this spice, but it's kind of has an analog to hey, I don't want you guys to screw up you know the production of this, so get your house in order type of thing, right?
Yeah,
um
yeah, because it's not from a place of altruism. It's more of a business thing.
mhm.
Is that we are a producing house after all. So if we screw up, then people up the chain that depend upon our revenue also have, like, missed profits and bad quarters and stuff like that. So
Yeah. So there's that, right? And then there's clear tension between the wife and the consort. Where in Dune they don't really show that because there's just a consort. There's not a wife. Looking at it from the Atreides point of view, right? So
yeah,
that's going to be internal kind of strife there. Yeah, I'll be playing the wife, unfortunately, but so but there'll be some that, and then of
there'll
course,
definitely be tension between my character Ashir and uh, the consort, because she's a Bene Gesserit. We have the spy network. That's two things that are basically opposed to each other. So
mhm,
that's going to be an issue.
yep.
Uh, and then between Alaric and me, there'll be issues as well, because I'm the heir, like, after him, because I'm the younger brother. But it's possible that maybe I see the house to be going in one way and he disagrees and wants it to go in some other way. So there's that. Um,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
there's a lot of layers between person potential personal conflicts within the house and then conflicts outside the house. Um, like one second. So yeah, you have other things like you have your external threats too, right? So like House Malakoff. So the way this is all kind of tied together is there was a family a couple generations back, kind of broke off, and they each control certain moons around this planet, the planet that produces this fuel, and two of them have very specific roles in that, and those two are the main rivals. Um, so there's going to be the external threat, kind of like the, if you're taking everything as kind of like a analog to the books, it'd be Harkonnen and Atreides, that sort of thing.
Mm. Correct.
In the game itself, Canley isn't going yet, but it will be. Obviously, it's the name of the game. So that will happen, and there's reasons for it, at least in my mind, of why. Because like one of the comments that we just made is like, why would they want production of this thing? They don't want people fighting or fucking around or not having heirs that make so. There's a reason, and I think in character it probably would make sense where everybody's like, man, they allowed that, great. I want to kill those fuckers, but I'm kind of surprised. So
Yeah, which adds to that layer of intrigue again as to why it was allowed, right?
yeah.
Which kind of is again, even though this is not like anywhere situated near the Dune saga, which is actually happening in the same universe, but it's the same thing. Is that why were the Atreides given Dune when the Harkonnens clearly controlled it before them, right? So yeah, there are exactly things like that that happen in the game. Um, uh, why certain things are allowed on on the surface level it makes no sense, but there's some deeper game going on, and can you find out what the game is and then turn it to your uh, advantage, right? It's like the Duke says to his son is, you know where the trap is set. That's why you're going into it because you know where it is right now, so you can react to it and appropriately subvert the trap. Is that if you raise the alarm that the trap is set, they might move the trap, and in the future you might not know where it is. Uh, so just because a trap is there doesn't mean it's a bad thing. The fact that you know it's a trap is good, and what you do with it is where it gets interesting.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and it'll be like it'd be very different. We've had a lot of sessions, particularly lately, where there's been a bit more combat than usual. I think, particularly my games for just what they were, really playtest games. Yeah, there's role play, of course, but there's been a fair amount of combat. I don't see that a lot in this, especially combat itself. There might be, who knows? You might get in a situation. It depends what happens, right? It depends what the
Correct.
situation brings. I mean, if you guys bring combat, or do things to encourage it, sure. There's a huge scale war for people who are listening to this that don't know is illegal, or must be sanctioned by someone. Small scale conflicts, maybe you'll get away with it, but house versus house conflict is probably going to have to be, and I'm talking about not Canley, I'm talking about like large, not large necessarily, but some sort of scale of armies fighting has to be given the blessing by someone,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and that someone would be someone up the chain from you.
Correct.
And then they probably have to get it from someone up the chain from
Up
them,
chain.
right? So
Yeah,
it's going to
yeah.
go,
And
the emperor might say, yeah, I don't care, but,
yeah,
yeah, somebody does.
correct. Because the thing is, again, like you said, the whole. I mean, even in the book, and in the entire universe it's set up, it's profits, right? Um, unless and in this I mean, people say war is profit. Yes, agreed. And to some extent, that is true. Depending on if you control the war and you shape it and mold it and direct it, you can bring it to your profit. But um, again, like these are houses that are spread across planets, entire systems. So there's a lot of power and money involved. So war can be planetary scale war, which is really not good at that scale for any kind of economics or
Yeah.
commerce or profits.
It's
And
it's
that is
why it's
why,
it's why atomics are illegal.
illegal. Yeah, because you could basically kill planets, which is again not great for commerce, not great for the bottom line and profits. So everything is related to profits. If the war is profitable to someone, and then it'll be, yeah, and if you can prove it to someone that I can make this war profitable for them, yeah, then you'll be allowed to do it. So that's the whole thing, is that you can't just go to war. You have to be able to wrap it up nicely to somebody or somewhere, saying, hey, this is how you can benefit from it, and then that's how it proceeds. And even at the small scale level, is like, yeah, any you know forceful action against someone, um, you want to be careful, because again, it has to be wrapped under layers of deception and misdirection. You don't want things directly coming back to your house, because anything and everything in this game setting can be used against you. Um, in any situation, you could have caused a ruckus on a planet, and then you go into some greater houses uh, court, and you could be embarrassed over there,
Yeah,
and that
you
plays.
caused me a loss of 5 million Solari.
Exactly, and that's a big thing. I mean, here, loss, like, you could have a RP loss, which is greater than a skirmish loss, or a combat loss, right? Like, losing face is sometimes worse than losing your life. So yeah, you have to be really careful, how you machinate through.
Look at okay. Here's an example. This is always what I found an interesting example of things is when you win, but you really lose. So let's say, for instance, taking the book example, another good book example. Leto was growing in power significantly, and so did Atreides because of who he was, their good deeds, blah blah blah, their power, and so he's winning, right? But really, it's not true because he makes somebody jealous, right? And that's the cause of his downfall because he did too well, right?
Yeah. Yes,
so,
exactly. You
so at
did.
the end he lost, right? But
Yes. In the end, he lost. Absolutely, you're perfectly right. If people have watched the movie American Gangster, there's that whole scene where his wife buys him that great big, like, fur coat, and he goes for the boxing match, and that's the first time people notice him, right? Because everybody's like, who's that man who's well dressed, who stands out? We've never seen him. Till then, he was a nobody, always in the shadows. Nobody knew who he was, but he had the biggest drug empire on that part of New York, right? He was raking in by the millions. But the moment he became public, that's it. That's when the problems all started. Because now somebody has something to look at, right? They know who the person is. They have you are tangential. You were something intangible at that point. You were just like a rumor, some ghost, some whisper. Then you show up, put a face to it, you become tangible, and now you're a target, right? So
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's you don't want to be overly. You want to be always in the shadows. You want to be the unknown person that's always machinating in the background and constantly being profitable.
There's
Yeah, you don't want
there's
to.
some saying about being at the top. What like if you're at the top, you get I can't remember the exact saying, but it's like you get knocked down or something. But yeah, that's generally
Yeah,
just
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, because now everybody can see you. Once they can see you, they can target you, and then that's when it really starts. So
yeah.
um,
Yeah, so
so
there's almost plans for just about every major political organization for this game. So the Bene Gesserit, the Bene Talaxu, the Chome, the Landstrat,
uh,
obviously,
the guild.
the Guild. What's the other big ones? I haven't brought in the Alaxians yet to make some thinking machines for you, but yeah, I mean the big major ones, yeah, and we've several of us have talked about how to make this happen in realistic ways, where still I know the truth of like what's happening. So yeah, I see a lot of people interested in being mentats for kind of seeing how the game is going to progress. It's kind of funny because I was helping Rogue make his character yesterday, and he's like, man, this what was he looking at? What archetype was it?
Strategist.
Well, that's what he ended up taking, but he was
Uh,
thinking of like my PDF. me shut down my PDF. Um, it's oh boy, not protector, but something else. Something that was I was like, that would be better for agent play because I don't see it coming into a great effect. Now, archetypes are pretty loosely defined, um,
Correct.
so you could still be a protector and be some sort of spy master, right? Or if you wanted.
Yeah, yeah,
But the
yeah,
problem is, it does set your top two skills. So it sets what's going to be an eight and what's going to, oh, not eight, six, I think, six and five right off the bat. But for skills, you do have free points to put in skills. So you could say, well, I want to understand up to eight still, which
correct.
would be, depending on what it was, it could be 4 points or, you know. So yeah, it's interesting. The archetypes don't lock you into a whole lot. They're not as strict as say like a class from D&D or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
But it does kind of push you in that direction, right? So, but yeah, I think that there's an opportunity to kind of split roles and dual roles. And like I was telling him, I think if everybody wants to be, kind of that spy master, I have a hard time describing what I mean by that. Not necessarily spy master, but like someone in charge of something, but it's mostly all mental,
yeah, yeah.
thought, not like I'm going to battle necessarily. And I was like, well, you have a lot of things. You have like the business side, you have the political side, and you have the war side. As like you could be a strategist, and you could be the war side. We're talking about Canley, too. We're not talking just about like sending troops into battle, but also Canley. I think one of their understand foci they get for not free, but that they have to take is Canley. Understand
Correct,
Canley, so
correct,
you understand
correct,
how to wage war with Canley. So you don't
correct.
say, well, maybe we should just nuke them. No, you can't
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah. No.
That sort of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And I think in the book, like again, like for example, Gurney Halleck is in a way the strategist. He's their
yeah, he would
he's
be.
their yeah, he was their master at arms. No, I think Duncan Idaho is the master at arms,
Yeah,
but yes, Gurney will be their strategist, right? He
war
would be their
master.
war master.
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So and yeah, I mean the thing is like the mentat. I think we because when you look at the book and you look at the different uh, like the what are they called? Not uh, uh, the main types. Like you could be like Fremen, Mentat, Bene Gesserit,
Oh, factions.
Spacing.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, Space Guild or the Sook Doctor, right? Of them, you're not Fremen because this game is not on Dune, so there's no
Yeah.
point. There's no Fremen outside of Dune. The Spacing Guild agent, unless again
I could
based on
see
the
that
game,
working. I could see that working. You're some sort
correct,
of, you're basically a diplomat opposite, right? So you're a
correct.
diplomat to your house, where you are really, from the Spacing Guild. I think that would be an interesting choice for
That
somebody
would
if
be
they wanted to do it.
interesting. Yeah, I would say, but that would make them the one person everybody else in the game would absolutely hate
Yeah, well, we
because
can't talk around him. We can't talk around
him, yeah,
it. Yeah,
him exactly, yeah, yeah. He would be the one person that nobody wants to talk around, nobody wants
yeah,
to be around, and nobody wants them on their planet,
yeah.
right? Like,
Right. Please leave.
let yeah, yeah. If people don't like the Benny Gesserit, everybody with the Benny Gesserit doesn't like the Spacing Guild,
Right. Yeah, right. It'd be
So
tough to play. Yeah,
yeah,
in
it'll be
in
very
that
tough.
context. Yeah.
Correct, correct. And then the Sook Doctor, which I mean, again, like, there is some amount of like so that's the thing. I can understand why people would go after the Mentat because like from a mental perspective, there's a lot of mental aspects, right? Like you're processing a lot of information with no thinking machines. You are pretty much like how do you justify who you are if you're not battling and if you're not a Benny Gesserit, you could giving a mentat kind of gives you that power to empower your actions through like whether you're a treasurer or you're a spy assassin or you're a strategist. That the mentat gives you that ability. But the in the book it says you don't have to complete your mentat training, which kind of makes sense because not everybody is like a Piter or a Thufir, right? Those are very, very rare.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
there's other examples of mentats. Paul Atreides was trained as a mentat by Thufir.
Correct.
The Gola Duncan, the Duncan Idaho Gola was a mentat. I'm almost positive.
Yeah.
So there's a couple like that. Okay, so now that you brought that up, kind of I wanted to address it about mentats and kind of in general, and how what it like. We're talking about mentats. There's two types of mentats, right? There's a twisted mentat and there's a normal
Mhm.
mentat. Well, so what's the difference?
Correct.
We're talking about you mentioned it earlier and it kind of got I got sidetracked, but um, when you talk about a normal mentat, you still have to do deceptions and stuff like that, where it's very clear that a twisted mentat has no ethics whatsoever, and maybe even is well, not maybe is pushed to their darker proclivities, right? Like Piter was a complete psychopath, but you
Correct.
say you just I don't know what's an example of something really bad. You want to inflict pain on your masochist or
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Whatever that is. They push those. So I don't think that the difference of say of what they mean by ethics is not like you're not going to do underhanded shit as a mentat. You have to survive. This is
Yes. You
Dune,
have to.
right? That doesn't.
Yes.
Yeah, but I think it's really kind of that. Like, are you fucking nut a nutter, right? And that's really where the twisted mentats come into play, like Piter.
Yes, and I also would like to add was in the book, when you read the book, and if you have listened to the audiobook also, it kind of gives you that, because people are voice acting, and it gives that additional kind of texture to the whole thing. Is a twisted mentat uh, is not does not. I mean, I don't think does not. I think the right word is not by definition loyal to the house. They are operating under their own set of rules and guidelines and goals, and if it aligns with the house, so be it. But they are not bound in any form of honor or anything else to the house. So, for example, the only reason Piter is machinating for the Baron is because Piter wants Jessica, right? He wants Jessica for himself, and then eventually the Baron plays a game with him and gives him the opportunity to be actually the Duke of Arrakis, because the Baron has his own game. He gives him the Duke of Arrakis to let go of Jessica so the Baron can just throw her into the desert, right? But on the other hand, Tufir need not be bought in any which way, right? He is
Mm-hmm.
honor bound to the house. He works for the house. The house's success is his success, right? So I feel it is, in addition to the psychopathic nature of Piter, it's also this, because there are many times in the book that the Baron has to control, like actively control Piter, like because you can see in the book, Piter is like he's almost losing control and is becoming, and there's a part in the book where Jessica is captured, and she, through her Bene Gesserit skills, can read Piter and his body language, and she basically decodes him, and she immediately finds that he is instantly, like, he's an assassin. Like, he could kill her and the Baron instantly if he wanted to, and she doesn't understand why the Baron has him around. But there's a reason why the Baron has him around. So
And
that's the difference. Like,
it's interesting to say that because Piter in one instance starts talking about how he knows that the Baron will kill him after
yes,
his uses is done, but he still doesn't care because he just his immoral fantasies about all this stuff he wants to do. And
correct.
he probably thinks that he can outsmart the Baron and get away with it too.
Exactly. Yes.
So
Because he's a mentat. He thinks he's smarter than the Baron. There's even a part in the old movie and in the book, well, actually more in the old movie, where he says my plan, and the Baron's like, your plan? No, my plan. And then he says, no, our plan.
right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, just
yeah,
talking about the movie. I wished they would just give it like another half an hour. It's already pretty long. What's another half an hour, right? And they could flesh out some of those secondary characters like Thufir, Piter,
fighter, yeah,
Duncan, or not Duncan. He had plenty, but
yeah,
Gurney,
Gunny.
Yui,
I think
people like
Gurney
that.
might come back more in the second half. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it makes sense. He
yeah.
would be there. So
I
yeah.
think UE, they didn't want to give it away because they were expecting some of the audience to have not read the book. so they
Yeah.
didn't want to give away anything about him being a traitor.
Yeah,
But
I
yes,
think that's fine. I think that's fine, but like they could have
Piter,
well,
yes,
Piter
like the
definitely.
guy, like even the guy who played Piter had that like look about him.
Oh, he looked
Yeah.
like Piter. He did.
Yeah, yeah, he did a very good casting,
Yeah.
and even the little bit that he was on screen, like it was perfect. I was like, oh shit, I want to see more of this guy. Like,
Yeah. Well,
just be Piter being Piter.
I saw interviews with him, and he knew the source material backwards and forwards. He had read the book several times, and he was stoked for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I was like, damn, yeah,
yeah,
like a little extra time. Maybe there'll be a director's cut or something for that. Like, but UA they didn't have to like give away. The only thing like I'm bummed about UA is that they didn't talk about imperial conditioning and what that meant.
yes,
So it wasn't
yes,
like that big a deal. It's like like
correct,
Piter's like, of course, I broke his imperial conditioning because
yes,
I'm great, and
correct,
so
exactly.
yeah. So
And
I think.
even there's this whole part, like we coming back to our game, like sometimes you do not want to know, like even the success, you want no one to know about it. For example, the Baron is extremely careful to because once the Sardaukar are involved on Arrakis, the one thing he doesn't want anybody to know was who the traitor was, in what fashion the traitor was made a traitor, because he doesn't want anyone to know that the imperial conditioning could be broken, because at that point he has actually more power over every other house, because every house has an imperial conditioned doctor, right? So yeah, that's actually a huge coup for the house Harkonnen,
Yeah,
that they were able to break the conditioning. But nobody should know about it ever, because that's a pretty big
might have to do it
powerful.
again
Yeah, exactly.
because I mean the Baron did plan on taking over the Emperor at some point, right? That was
Yeah,
I think that was explicitly stated even, um, you know. So,
yeah.
but yeah,
It is. It is. That's the whole point, because they were stockpiling spice, and the emperor was stockpiling spice, and if they could somehow, like, they were, what does the book say, and even the movie says, 10 billion solari a year for 80 years
hmm
was the money they were pulling out of Dune.
yeah,
That's a lot of money.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's very interesting. I've always been a Game of Thrones fan. Well, I was actually a Dune fan first, but with gaming, I've done a lot of Game of Thrones, and this is Game of Thrones in space, and if not more complicated than actual, most of the complications in Westeros and Lord of the Rings. Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire is by her, the family ties to people and how that works. Otherwise it's not all that complicated, but man, you have so many organizations, and you have that in A Song of Ice and Fire too. But Dune just cranks it up a notch, man. You have the guild navigators, you have the emperor, you have all the great houses, you have the Landstra, you have Chom, you have the spice, you have Sappho juice, you have Mentats, you have Bene Gesserits, and it's just Bene Telaxu, you got Ixians, you got all these, and then if you go on, now I can't remember exactly when Frank stopped writing and his son started, but they have the honored matres and stuff like that when you get further on in the books, but
further on, yeah, and then it kind of goes on in its own new world. But yeah, for sure. But even then, the problem is, even within the Dune universe, like the core Dune universe, also, like each of these people have their own like the space, like the space guild is not as powerful in the sense, like when you look at an emperor or a house, but they're so powerful because you need them to move around. Otherwise, you're just stuck on your own planet.
yeah,
You
and
know.
it's
Um,
interesting that the fact that spice is highly addictive, and if you stop taking it, you will die. So not
yeah.
only do they want spice for just economic reasons, they need it or they'll die. So if you say, I'm going to just not take the spice to you, and you're just going to die. Yeah. So,
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you don't want to make people aware of how powerful you are. So something that you read the book and you slowly start to appreciate, like how like the Fremen, for example, are always like the Harkonnens think that they are basically desert rats. The Emperor doesn't think much about them, but when you kind of go through the book, you realize, wait, so. They are the ones who made the still suits. If they're just desert rats, how did they come up with the technology to make still suits? Right? Then the paracompass, the thumper, the sand compactor, the tents the tents that they use, like a lot of the technology, like from technology, you're like, wait, how do desert rats do this? Like, no, they're not desert rats. They're extremely smart and resourceful. Just nobody's given them the due. And actually, somewhere in the book, when you read it, it talks about how why does the guild navigators not put a satellite over Dune, right? Because that could help you contain and figure out where the worms are, where things are going, where the storms are. You can pull out spice much faster. It is I think Paul, once he becomes like starts getting really awakened, once he's out in like once the house has been taken down, he and his mother out in the open desert, when the spice finally like really starts reacting with him and he starts getting full on awakened, he makes the connections because he understands that the Fremen have been paying off the guild navigators to not put a satellite up there because the satellite will also show actually how many Fremen exist and can start tracking their movements, right? So an entire a people a people on a planetary scale are so powerful and are so organized that they have been able to hide themselves, appear as desert rats while creating technologies and like machinating and forcing the space guild to do their bidding. Why? Because they control the spice, really, right?
Yeah,
So yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah. It's
pretty cool.
interesting. Yeah, it's cool. I think there'll be a lot of interesting things that happened, and I hope it doesn't get bogged down with role play for Sega. Role play is great, but like I hope like people kind of can like continue on the plot side, like pushing
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
forward with their role play. And because I don't want to be like, okay, this happens to kind of like jolt it forward. I mean, that's going to
Yeah,
happen
yeah,
from time
yeah.
to time, right? But I'm gonna put situations in front of you, but not really as much as like a normal game. It would be, what do you want to do? How do you want to achieve that? Okay, let's role play a bunch about it. Let's plan. Let's do a couple roles. Let's do some agent play. Let's do some
I think
architect play. Whatever.
one thing I'm really interested in is because most game systems don't really. I mean, they might define some mechanics, like oh, you roll your will versus their deception, or your this versus. But this book has an entire section devoted to like
Hmm.
intrigue mechanics, right? So because that'll be interesting because at some point, you'll have to go into mechanics to actually um, force someone to do something, right? It's not like it's not I'm not talking about like using the voice to force someone, but it's like a
Convince them.
adversarial conversation that you're having, right?
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting because
So like a Song of Ice and Fire has the same kind of mechanic. Not exactly, but where like okay, you have like big plots that you're trying to pull off, and then you do these intrigues with certain people, and if you succeed, it grants you points towards your total goal, and once you get your points to your total goal, things start to unravel, and you start getting like progress on it, that sort of thing. But yeah.
yeah, so that'll be really cool to
Hmm.
kind of watch.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, what else?
so when is the first game going to be? The end of this month?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm out of town for like a week starting next Thursday, and
Okay.
so I think it's the 22nd. I want to
Cool.
say. So. It'll be the third week in November. It will be you, Walter Peck, Slip, and I think the fourth is Rogue. I want to say.
Okay.
Um, and that's where everything is going to get kicked off. Slip's character will come to the house. There'll be envoy from your liege lords, and then there will be other people there. So
Other people there. Dun dun dun.
so
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I've built in with you guys' help, a lot of intricacies, which I think will be cool. Like, who's the since you're like the mentat of the Paul Atreides variety, who taught you, right? It's not Thufir, right? So it's who is it? Well, it's some guy that was the mentat of the house before you, and he retired when your father died. And what happened to him, no one quite knows. He was a little bit of an asshole. Was he a twisted
Does
mentat, maybe? Um,
does my character a little bit of an asshole?
right.
Yeah, and and there's yeah, and I think there's also like why was I treated why was I training to be a mentor? What is the plans behind that? Because there's a plan. Everything there's a reason for
Mm,
everything. It doesn't happen. So um, yeah, it's also um what is the goal behind being a mentat, right? Like you're already a house. Like generally, a mentat is like a tool that you buy from somebody. It's like but why would you train a house heir to be a mentat? What's the reasoning behind it? So
Why
there's
didn't
the
he?
stuff.
Why wasn't your brother trained as a mentat as well? That's also
Correct,
because he was not.
correct.
And there's some I like to give like talk to people about like what do you think about this idea, right? Because I don't want people to be like, oh well, I didn't know about that part. There's secrets, of course, but I want people to have some sort of like tie in to those secrets when things happen, they're like, oh, not just like, oh, I don't really. You're disconnected from them so much it doesn't
Yeah,
mean
yeah, yeah.
anything to you.
Correct. Yeah, I think
Um,
I think one way to put it is like while you're the GM and you put it all together, like all of us have like given a lot of content to flesh the world out with you, right? So
yeah,
so we kind of feel more connected to the entire world that's created, more than just say, oh, I just spawn in your world and let's play. It's not
yeah,
it's not that big.
yeah, and
Uh,
a lot of times that is what the game is, and I as a GM I don't like that as much. I want to, yeah, you might the world at large might be mine, but like you're like people's shared backgrounds and they help me build my world because not only you share them with other players, but to share with me too. It's like, well, these NPCs are important to me. Well, why, right? And how do they connect to the larger picture of everything? How do you connect to the larger picture of everything? That's why I like everybody. It doesn't have to be like, oh, go write me a 5 paragraph essay on your character, but just talk to me about what's going on. I guess so. um, the four of us have had a lot of chance to kind of talk this over and get everything set, whereas a couple other people haven't really had that opportunity as much, which is unfortunate because I want to bring them into that kind of thing as well. So hopefully they will. So, but I
yeah, and I
think
think also once the game gets going, and then they become part of it, they'll have more ideas of how it's
yeah,
like where it's going. That's also the other thing is like the four of us. I'm not saying the others don't, but the four of us are little bit more on the fanboy spectrum, or
yeah, sure,
like just of,
yeah,
of of the setting. So there is that to kind of contend with like for every idea coming, we'll have, oh, what about these 10 ideas of that I'm having, and
hmm
and then it's almost like, oh, okay, rein it down a bit.
yeah. It is helpful for this game if you know the source material, really
Yeah, yeah.
well. Rogue and I were talking yesterday, and he's seen the '84 version of Dune, and that's it. And I'm like, well, okay, it's I guess you get the gist of it. It's not going to be quite that weird, Smoke some crack before you watch it. But yeah. Um, so I hope that people don't feel kind of left out because they don't have that deep understanding of all the lore. And it's like, well, who's a Bene Talaxu? What's that?
Yeah.
That's not in the book, that sort of thing. So
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think you've also shared a lot of resources on the game channel about,
yeah,
all the lore that's in the world, and also in the couple of handouts. And I think you posted or somebody posted a YouTube channel that talks about
I
all
did.
the
Yeah.
lore. And yeah, yeah. So I think there's enough between all of that to, and again, like, I mean, end of the day, it's Dune is Dune, and everything that's happening is happening there. this is just in the same universe. So it's like you don't have to know everything that's happening
That's
on
true.
that planet to
Yeah.
play this game. Yeah,
Yeah, you almost have to know nothing about what's happening on
yeah,
Dune with
yeah.
Atreides or Harkonnen. You know, I just know really the spice and how that kind of honestly, like the first book is not even that important to this game. It's more the other books, honestly. Whereas, like yeah, you get to know what's happening with the Bene Gesserit and Chom and the Landstrat and that kind of thing, and understand like okay, Chom's this big conglomeration of economic. It's basically a big company which everybody owns shares in,
Right.
and so everybody wants it to succeed because and the Landstrat is more of a political organization of all the great houses, kind of a medieval fiefdom sort of structure. And that breaks it down into what you need to know, really, mostly. And then you say, well, the Bene Gesserit are these kind of, I don't know, they're not technically magical. Like the voice isn't even magic. It's more like a, uh, I don't know, it's on the verge, but not quite. It's
Yeah,
more,
I think the best way to explain Bene Gesserit is I think they have figured out like the mind body interaction, to its individual components, and they understand how you know like everything is connected in your body, right? Like it's not like your mind is working disconnected from your body and it's vice versa. So a suggestion to the mind can force your body to behave in a particular way, and they've just kind of brought it down. That's their whole thing, is like they are basically trying to crack the human genome, and from the genome everything up till what you see in front of you, right? And that's they've been doing for thousands of years. So
yeah,
that is why it looks like magic. But I mean, you know unexplained science is
yeah,
magic,
yeah,
right?
right,
That's basically
yeah,
what it is.
hmm,
So, and they're not going to share their science with you. It's
yeah,
that's what makes
right,
them powerful,
hmm,
right? So, um,
yeah, yeah. I think
but I think go ahead, go ahead. Sorry,
No,
go
I
ahead.
was I was just continuing the navigators, the guild highliners, understanding that they require space to instantly go anywhere in the galaxy, and they have a monopoly on space travel, so nobody else can do it. Um, what else is really important one? Um, and it's really it. I mean, that I can think.
I think the most interesting aspect for everyone role playing, I think, would be is um like most games when we role play, the whole aspect is to kind of go over the top, right? Like pretty much most like game settings we are playing, we're generally going. I mean, the places where we may not be going over the top would be like a Song of Ice and Fire, Star Trek, um, or a setting similar to that, which is like very well defined lore which you're running in. But otherwise, most things you're like a larger than life character that is like it's just being awesome, right? But that's something that again, like those other systems, you're not really here. There's a lot of subtlety that you're trying to role play out through words and through actions and through insinuations, which is going to be very interesting,
That
like
is
because
very
that's what it.
that is because it takes the other person on the other end to understand that that might be what you're doing, instead of being like, well, you said this, and so I was being deceptive, or I was trying to not be deceptive, or I was being deceptive to everybody else, but to you I was trying to portray myself in a way that you understood, right?
Correct.
And that takes like next level role play, first of all, and
Yeah,
second of all, it takes the person on the other end to understand what you're doing, right? and
correct.
not and not just say out of character, well, that's not what you said, right? Well, that's not,
Yeah,
and that and not be like real cheesy about it, right? So you're
correct.
like,
Correct.
yeah, so
Yeah, so that's what's good. I think even from that's why I think at least me, I'm really looking forward to the game because it's a different kind of a different way to role play, right? Like it's a different style completely. It's um, yeah, you really have to be on your toes. You have to be thinking what you're going to say before you're going to say it. Like you're like really like listening to the other players, and you're like, okay, they're saying this, and this is how I want to react to them, and I want to react in this particular way, right? So it's not that you're trying to be in the moment, off the cuff, but you're also like planning what you're going to say, so you can say it well and get it across. So that's going to be fun. I think I am. I am super excited.
Yeah, I like to experiments with styles of kind of games too, right? Not just systems, but like style of play, right? Like how's it actually gonna fall out? And I think this is something that we've really not done. So I feel that it's gonna be interesting where people are saying one thing, not like okay, I'm gonna lie to this guy. Okay, that happens all the time, but like it's more like you're lying, but the way you're saying it or the way you're doing certain things or context for your lie might tell other people, you know, something, a totally different message. And I find that interesting. And that's just one part of it, right?
Yeah, yeah, correct. It's just one. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like again layers within layers, like plans within
Yeah.
plans. Yeah,
I
exactly.
think probably the closest game that I've played on B&B that's been like that has been L5R, where you know you're speaking in a way to not offend people necessarily, but still at the same time offend them. Things like that, right?
Yeah,
My
yeah,
character
yeah.
wasn't very good at that, so I didn't actually do that. My character was kind of adult, but yeah, and I think that subtlety was kind of missed by a couple people, but yeah, it's just comes down to knowledge of the game, the setting, things like that. So yeah, so
Yeah.
I am looking forward to it. I think that. It could be a long running game. I foresee a lot of sessions where I sit back and fall asleep. I sit back and take notes and just kind of plan myself and don't really get involved. And I think there's been games where that's happened in the past, particularly CP is one I can think of that I was a player in, where there was
Uh,
just a lot of planning, a lot of talking.
Correct.
And I think that's all good. And it does kind of slow the progression of the game a bit, probably, because not every session is going to move the plot forward in a large way. You know, it's going to in a way where you're planning to what you're going to do next, and you're talking about it, and you're having, interactions, but it's not necessarily pushing the story forward a whole bunch
True, true.
because you're planning for another session where you're going to do that, and so
Correct, correct.
and that's fine. I
But I
like.
think the thing is, it's more richer that way.
You're right. You could
Yeah,
say
yeah,
on Discord, "Hey, let's do this," right? And it could all be contextually fine based on the role play that you've done, but it's not like let's talk about it in game and actually, And I think there's some people like Bo says, "Well, I don't like him to plan in session." I understand that in some instances, but in this political kind of schemery that you're doing, I think it makes more sense to do it on screen. Not
oh
like
yes,
not like hey, we're going to plan to attack this thing, right?
correct, correct. And I think there is. I would like to make a point there that while we may not move the storyline forward, I believe unlike other games, um, traits and assets
Mm-hmm.
are created through they like there is no rolling or stuff like that, right? You see what
Not
I'm
for a
saying, like
trait.
traits and yeah, yeah. So I think it's important that while we may not be like only through our role play can we create traits that will help us succeed in the mission we're trying to do, which I think is a pretty cool concept that the book has, right? Even assets, you can create assets. Like for example, while you're dueling, you can create an asset during the duel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Out of
some assets
momentum,
you
yeah.
yeah, out of momentum. So you could create assets, short-lived assets for your main mission through the role play that you're doing right now, you
Yeah.
know. So even that is like a very interesting thing where your role play is planned a bit. So you are moving towards a small goal within the role play to create an asset, right? Like you're role playing. Maybe we're creating an asset through role play of a infiltrated spy on the other end on some planet that we're then going to use when we get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So which other games, like for example, CP did not give me that mechanic to give it to you guys through like through role play, you creating this somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that way. So I don't think the I think the role if we role play well and keep an eye on the mechanics of trait and asset creation, we can use that as currency to create those.
Mm-hmm.
Does making a camp like does making say attack, for example. stronger. Like basically giving moment instead of using like momentum to buy dice is a mechanic and then it kind of falls
Hmm.
flat in a role play heavy thing. But if you're using this to create, I'm creating this as assets ahead of time,
Yeah,
right?
I was just thinking about this today because I was looking at like the three main momentum spins like that aren't built into necessarily the conflicts because they have their own. So the three ones you can always do is what is it? Increase the opportunity by no more dice. Um,
Yes.
what's the other one? Create
Uh,
traits and assets. But the one is
mm,
like obtain information. That's going to be
yes,
huge.
yes,
It's
yes.
a difficulty zero anyway. So yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even that is like where you're asking, especially mentats have that like obtain information a lot, right? Because you're pretty much, you have a bunch of input coming in, bunch of raw data coming in, and you're creating first approximation calculations, second approximation calculations, and finally sometimes like straight line computations that is 100% correct. So, but that can only be done if you role play and then do like mechanically maybe do like obtain information based on your role play, right? So stuff like that, and then you can create assets and traits out of that because you can say, no, going into this RP intrigue, I already know 6 facts about, say, the person I'm going to talk with, and I'm going to use that, right?
yep. And then
So
you can
that
build,
person is all,
and then by that time you should have momentum at the wazoo, so that you can create traits. Oh, this person likes I don't know. Um,
oh yeah, let's say this person likes, for example, Caledon wine,
yeah,
right? I make sure Caledon wine is at the table when they come. So now they're automatically in a favorable disposition because there is wine that they like, right? And then I can create one more asset saying I have a particular server at the table, somebody in our employ who is very adept at pouring wine in large quantities surreptitiously. So
yeah,
now the person is drunk, right? So
yeah,
stuff like that, right? So I think that also is very interesting. Like the assets and traits are all creative. There is no there's no thousand lists of assets and traits you can only create from, right?
right.
So
Yeah, you can
uh,
whatever, right? I mean, they have blackmail to a sword, right, as assets, so it can just literally be anything,
okay.
which is pretty cool. Um, yeah. What else? Anything else to talk about tonight? We're gonna do several of these, I hope, with everybody that wants to do them, and we'll talk about Dune. We'll talk about our house, our characters, everything. We've went over quite a bit tonight. I'm doing system tutorials, so Zypher's going to help me with those. The ones that are better suited for two people than one person. So I have three kind of lined up, all the way from just dice rolling mechanics to what traits and assets and determination and all the way to extended tasks basically and how all that works, and it's all pretty simple. um, I think it's less than an hour of me talking already, so um, yeah, and then we're going to do all the conflicts next, starting with dueling and going through those skirmish. Just show how everything kind of builds off the extended task and the conflicts, and goes from there. Like people who know 2D20, it's very different in the fact that there's no there's no combat dice or challenge dice. What do they call? Are they called challenge dice? I think it's challenge dice. Um,
Challenge dice, yes,
yeah,
yes. Yeah, no, no, yeah, yeah, challenge dice.
yeah, I think it's challenge dice for
Because
Trek. And
it was D6, right? A D6 in
yeah,
Trek.
it's a D6. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah, yeah.
D6 with some combination. I think it's usually a blank blank 1 1. Uh,
And then the Trek symbol in
to
Conan it was
effect. Yeah, I think.
effect. Yes, yes, correct.
So yeah, and so yeah, there's none of that. It's not necessary. Combat is really just an extended task, um, and you have
Which is
two.
also role play heavy, right? Because
Mhm.
it's like, for example, we kind of did a sample dueling session between the two of us, and then we're going to record it again. But yeah, it has like some amount of mechanics to it, but there is a reason behind it. Like they're really trying to get you to play out a duel, right? A duel,
Yeah,
like most combat, when you like, oh, I'm going to move my sword, and you're kind of role playing it, but then it goes like, oh, roll your d20, then add your modifier, and then roll your damage, right? it doesn't really, but this is more about, okay, I'm doing like a bold move, I'm doing some subtle moves, I'm like feinting, and then I'm going to thrust, and I'm going to move my sword from this guard to my next guard. Like it's all about you're moving to make maybe, like one attack, right? Because when
Yeah.
you do get attacked, it is pretty, I mean, like two or three successful attacks can bring you down, right? There's
Yeah, I
no
mean,
concept of
if
like,
you use enough momentum, you could probably do it in one.
yeah.
Yeah, you could potentially get five, do five of 5 points of requirement in one attack.
Right. And if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken, like there is no HP when you're in a fighting, but
it's just
in
what it's whatever the requirement is of the extended
correct,
task, which usually is based on the skill rank of what's applicable to the extended task. So if it's if you're fighting, it's battle. If it's probably intrigue, it's communicate or whatever.
correct. So
Um,
let's take battle for example. No skill can be higher than eight. So eight, the moment somebody crosses eight through an extended task, you're done. You're relying on the
yeah,
ground, right? So it's not much if you think about it. So
yeah.
and that's what it is. Like everything is deadly. So you really only want to get into it when you know as a player and your character is going to win, and that's why you create all these traits and
Yeah, and you
assets
can
and stuff.
create traits and assets in the fight by uses of momentum, right? Which is always generate momentum, right? You want
Yeah,
momentum, so you can do
yeah,
that. And people don't do this. I've ran 2D20 games quite a bit, and everybody's afraid to give threat for
yeah.
as a substitute to momentum. I get it, right? I was talking. I think in one of the system tutorials, I was talking about how it can lead to a kind of a race of you spend momentum. Okay, you're out of momentum. You start giving me threat. I start using threat. You start giving me threat. You start using because when you eventually either you're both people are going to just compile momentum and threat continually until something breaks. Right, somebody screws a roll,
Yeah.
and then that person wins. That's the only problem. Or it's going to be like or really that's what, or you just don't give threat and
Yeah,
you get screwed, right? So,
yeah,
or I
that's the
don't
thing
use
is
it.
that it correct. But yeah, I think that's a very good point. Is that that's like if you like gambling in some form or the other, and you're
Yeah,
comfortable with it, then giving threat to a GM is it's a little more natural to give it, right? Because you've taken risk before in your other parts of life. You've gambled, you play poker, and you kind of know how to manage risk, and you're okay with giving risk and being able to take it back through some smart plays. And then yeah, I think it's good. It's we'll have to get in the habit of giving some threat
but the
because
thing
in a
is,
way,
I don't think you can buy traits with threat though. I think that's one thing you cannot do.
sure that
But you have
yeah,
to you got to generate momentum, and how do you generate momentum is just succeeding very well. And
correct,
so
correct,
buying more dice, you can do that, and then you can use momentum. But then you kind of got to start over, right? So you kind of get this engine going where you say you roll 5 dice, well that's 6 momentum you got to spend to do that. So you're out of momentum. How much are you going to actually build back up after you do that? Well, you might, but then you got to pay for traits and stuff, so you're back down to zero. So really, the player is at a disadvantage to do that quite often. Now that I think about it, because I don't think I'll have to look, but I don't think you can buy traits and assets with threat. I think that's one thing you cannot do.
no, makes sense.
So, but yeah,
But still, like I think sometimes it makes sense to give threat to just win this round.
yeah,
That's basically what threat is, right? Like it's a last ditch attempt that you want to win at whatever cost, and there'll be a cost eventually, right? So yeah,
yeah. I might just keep threat forever, indefinitely. My pool never
yeah,
goes away, right? You imagine like me having like 100 threat at like
right.
episode 10 and being like, oh, here comes the starter car, boys. I mean, that's basically what happened to the tradies, right?
Yeah, that's
They had
true.
about 200 threats saved up, and then they got they got their butt plugged. So very illegal statement.
That's
Uh,
that's true. That's true. Once
yeah,
you hear the Sadukar coming after you, then you know, oh shit, okay, he spent all his threat.
yeah. Once you hear
Oh, that's
the
your
throat singer, you're fucked.
That's true, right? In this system, there is no cap. Like Trek had a cap, like no more than six
Of,
momentum.
oh, there's a cap of six momentum.
There is a okay, okay, okay.
Hmm.
But is there a
Yeah,
cap on Trek?
no, there's never a
No.
cap on threat.
Trek. Okay,
No.
cool.
Yeah, Trek is. Yeah, I ran some Trek about 6 months ago.
Okay, so the cap is similar, six
Yeah,
momentum.
it's six in all of them. Now,
Okay.
when you switch a scene in almost any game, I think you lose one momentum just by switching scenes.
Scenes. Okay.
It's something I forget almost every time, though. Almost every time.
Wish there was a
Um,
macro for that, like where you say scene switch and
yeah,
automatically
right,
gain momentum.
right. Okay, oh, I got to do that every time. Yeah, honestly, this is the least amount of work I've done on macros for any game ever. I think since I knew how to do macros, and all I did was do like the skill rolls, and that's it. That's it.
Since somebody long time ago showed you how truly macros are done. And
Yeah.
then eventually you became a master.
Kind
Uh,
of.
kind of.
Kind of.
Ah,
Yeah, kind
that's
of.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're gonna have a good time. I think it's gonna be
Yeah.
interesting. I think there's gonna be I think there's going to be a lot, like I say, a lot of stuff just talky, talky, talky. I hope everybody understands that. There might be even scenes where there's no dice rolling. Who knows? Yeah, maybe. But
I think like that when we get to the intrigue conflict aspect, I think that might happen. I think I think you might have to put that like
mhm,
we might have to engage that because it'll be because at some point it'll be like say three or four players against just the GM, right? Like the
yeah,
GM is controlling all the NPCs, but then there's three active players with their own creative ideas that is going against one person,
yeah,
which which in a role play setting is it become makes it kind of imbalanced, right? So that's how the intrigue
mm,
conflict will help kind of balance that out.
yeah,
So
yeah.
um,
It's also yeah. I think you're right. Yeah,
yeah, because it's three people who like Slip, Walter Peck, and me are like all actively trying to derail all your plans.
right.
Um, just through just through smart usage of words would be imbalanced, right? Unless you have
Yeah.
three players on your end who are voicing all the NPCs and playing against us, then okay, then yeah, you really don't need mechanics and dice. But otherwise, yeah,
Yeah,
you need
and
intrigue.
I was thinking too, and thinking more like what happens when a player goes against the player, and this is not something that's really addressed that I can find anywhere in any 2D20 game. Is what happens when this occurs to your momentum and threat pool. So
Mm,
it's like you can't buy with
you're
my
right
threat
there.
pool because that doesn't make any sense. So do you give them momentum instead?
Mm.
Um, so do you have your own momentum pools?
For
Um,
that scene, can you have your own momentum
I mean,
pools?
you can do whatever you want. I can't. I
Yeah.
mean, I can't think of any other way to do it than do something like that.
Correct. I think that'd be cool. I mean, it'll be cool to when we do that. It'll be like one some it'll be experimental for sure,
Hmm.
and we might have to create some house rules after the first one. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, this worked, this didn't work. It kind of makes sense where you're kind of exchanging momentum, and then after a point, once you hit the six, that could still be the cap, and you can't go.
Yeah.
And those momentum after the scene are all lost, right? It's not
Yeah.
like say Slip and me create six momentum each, and then we want to put six back into an
Right.
empty
No.
player pool. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You would
yeah.
have
No,
your
that's
own pools that would
yeah.
be separate from anything else. Like so you would always start with zero momentum, I suppose, which makes sense, I guess.
Correct.
Unless you
For,
did
for,
something like I do obtain everybody does obtain information the first thing, right? So they can
yeah.
generate some momentum.
Which was kind of it would be the smart thing to do for sure.
Yeah,
And again, like say for example, if we were dueling, like yeah, because you're playing against each other's extended tasks, right? Like the
yeah,
dueling when we read the rules, it's no different if it's an NPC versus player versus player. It's the same. Like because even the NPC, like in this setting, like you said, that it's the same sheet, like it's the same character creation. Minor NPCs, sure, you can one shot them,
Yeah.
but if you're playing against any major NPC, it's no different from playing a player versus a player. So the rules are the same. So
Yeah. Yeah, you don't have to go into extended task when they're a minor player. You just like I guess they
yeah,
have to do an extended task versus you. I'm pretty sure I read that, which would make sense,
yes,
right, for
which
them.
would make sense.
Yeah.
Correct, but again, most minor NPCs would never try to take on a major
Right.
NPC in the
Right.
Dune
That's
setting, right?
dual. No,
Yeah,
I don't think
no,
that's gonna happen.
no, you will not even get close to me. My master of
I'll use my
arms.
las gun and blow us all
uh,
up. That's something I've wondered, right? And as being like, if you're trying to kill somebody, why don't you send okay, like the Harkins had that guy buried, right? And with his hunter seeker trying to kill Paul, why didn't they have the
yeah,
guy just come out with a las gun and shoot somebody with a shield and just kill everybody? That's one thing I've
yeah.
always like. It's like, well, just kind of. I guess it would just be too easy, but I mean,
Yeah, I think it would be no. Okay, so I know why that happened. In the book, it is a subplot that Peter de Vries is running. He knew that. I mean, he did not know if Paul would survive or not, but his computation was Paul would survive. But the reason they wanted to do that was because it would create additional pressure on the house because now an attempt on the Duke's son's life was made. So in the book they talk when Peter is talking to the Baron, he talks about the entire plan, and this was one aspect of the plan was to make an attempt on the life to destabilize the system because that then led to Thufir being failing.
mm-hmm.
The moment Thufir failed, uh, he felt like inadequate, which meant that he now wanted to find who the like. Then he felt there was a spy somewhere. And he wanted who the spy was, and then he turned his attention to Jessica, and they were fighting in between each other, right? So Tufir was distracted. Like he couldn't put all his mental abilities in breaking down all the Harkonnen apparatus that was still running in the shadows on Dune, and he couldn't find the real spy because they said a couple of times they both went back and forth. What about Yui? And they always got stuck on the fact that he's imperial conditioned, so it cannot be you, right? The very thing
Mm-hmm.
that was the reason why it was Yui was what they kept getting hit against, and the play on his life was in that fashion for it to fail. They didn't
Yeah.
know how it would fail, but it was in it says in the book that in his line of computation he expects like a 70% chance it's not going to succeed, something like that. So um, and the thing with the Laskin, and it is also because the Baron wanted to be over the body of the Duke to gloat in the last few
That's
minutes.
true.
So he,
Yeah.
he didn't want to take an action where he could just destroy them and there's nothing to gloat over, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a probe.
Hey, Rogue,
What's up?
We're just chatting
big sexy in the house.
about things about we're kind of bouncing around between the books, our game, the system, shit like that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
I was hoping you guys were talking about that stuff.
Mhm.
Interested in some of the lore because I still don't know much about
There's a handout in the
anything.
game. Let me see what it's called. It has links to helpful. Wait, get out of this one. What's going on here? Okay.
I'm gonna jump in there real quick.
What the fuck, man? Okay. I'm not in the right thing. Hold on.
Are you live streaming this?
No, I'm recording it, but I'm
Okay.
not live streaming it. So it is under not
Yeah, there
system
you go.
handouts.
Rite to Kanly Introduction
Okay.
1, under campaign handouts.
Yeah. So that
And then
describes
there
how
is
the game's going to work, kind of, and it has links to the Dune wiki with everything I feel that is pretty important to know. So Landstrat, Chome, Spice, Spacing Guild, Bene Gesserit. Um, do I have any? And I have some secondary stuff, which is just for our house and stuff. But I think that if you read those, or the important parts of them, you'll understand everything you need to, for the most part. So.
I'm just
Okay.
looking at our chat. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, well, I think you should pin this. There is this YouTube channel that Ted posted.
Yeah.
It's a deep dive into Dune. Uh,
Yeah, he does mostly Dune videos. It's called Quinn's Ideas. It's in there somewhere. Some guy.
can you? How do I pin this?
Right click on it. You might not be able to pin it.
Ah, okay. Can you just pin that? Like, yeah, the Quinn's ideas.
Yeah, I'll do it. So it's a shout out to him. Let's see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Shout out to Quinn.
Nope. There we go. Pin. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, there's like it's kind of cool videos I was listening to, like where are there aliens in Dune and stuff like that, and like interesting stuff from some of the really kind of the cursory books written not by Frank but written by his kid. There's some sort of ship that went out and everybody went mad, but there's no aliens that have been found in any books. It's kind of like shit like that, like interesting stuff. So yeah, he's got some good videos out there. But yeah, like the Butterland Jihad, like the why are there mentats? Um, what the Bene Gesserits are? They're not magical technically. Yeah, but I think all those things that are pinned there is kind of, and I can give you like a what I wrote in there is a pretty small like the land stratified culture system of government of the Imperium. That's all it is. Galactic expanding merchants guild that controls all commerce in the galaxy is Chome. Spice, spices. Spacing Guild, responsible for all interstellar travel. They rely on the spice to allow them to navigate. All interstellar travel goes through the Spacing Guild. They have a monopoly. And then Bene Gesserit's a religious organization of women that serves as advisors with their own plans for the galaxy. Their order is to gifted with special powers, particularly with the help of spice. They practice eugenics in order to breed a messiah that is omniscient and has other powers. And like it's kind of interesting, like especially with the books coming out, and there's like some far left criticism of things. Like when I say eugenics, I don't mean necessarily the eugenics of early 20th century. I mean, it'd be the complete opposite of that. Like, right? Because eugenics in real life was keeping the same genes over and over and over again, which has proven to be not very good biologically for your survival. And it's quite the opposite. That they're looking for the best genes out there from many different people. So it's completely different. I guess maybe I should use a different word than eugenics, maybe just breeding program. But that's what I mean when I say that. So
So
Yeah.
there's
So, go ahead, bro.
so there's no aliens at all,
no.
but is there mutants or something? Or
Yeah. So they're definitely mutants. So the guild navigators particularly are highly mutated because of their high usage of spice. They live in these big tanks of water, I think,
well,
and
oh, that's the vagina face thing.
yeah, the vagina face things in David Lynch's Dune. They have like webbed feet, webbed hands. There's also the Bene Talaxu, who are actually more like real eugenics, and they look like kind of like elves a bit. That's the way they're described. So there's things like that. So people who have a high reliance on spice, they can be mutated. Well, hell, I can't remember, Zypher. You might correct me on this, but Leto the second, he turns into a giant sandworm partially. I don't remember exactly how
Yeah.
that happens. I probably just from the spice. There's some weird shit out there, but everything is baseline human. But yeah, there's heavy mutations out there, but it would take a lot of
Yeah, and
spice
the
stuff to do
a lot
so.
of spice, and also the spacing guild, like the vagina face guys, are that is not like an instant mutation. That is like hundreds of years of spice consumption that has led
Yeah.
to the mutation. And even in there are like different levels of the spice, like space navigators, uh, because they're kind of in a cloud. Like actually, in the new movie, they do a good job of showing it. Like in the older movie, because it's 84, they did the best they could and how they imagined it. But think of it as like you're just wearing a rebreather suit just full of like vaporized spice, right?
Right.
And you're constantly just breathing that stuff in. So
It
the
makes
thing,
sense too. Yeah. It makes
right? So
sense.
you
Like
look at
low G. That
correct,
over generations. Yeah.
exactly. The other thing is that even the word, even spice, right? Like it's actually spice melange, and in the book, what they say is that it is a drug for all practical purposes. It is a drug. It's a narcotic, no different from any other drug we have on our planet today, right? The difference being, and the reason it's so powerful, is that unlike a standard drug, right, which it behaves the same way. Like for example, let's take marijuana, right? Like the first time, whoa, this is something new and interesting. But every other time is just like the first time,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And that's the problem with any drug today. Eventually it's the same, and then that's how the degeneracy starts, right? It's the same. Like they had an amazing high the first time, and then every high is always a poor approximation of the first time. It just keeps like the experiences becomes just it's a carbon copy. But if you take a carbon copy of the first one, and you take a carbon copy of the second one, you take a carbon copy of the carbon copy, and eventually it just fades, like it doesn't have any resemblance to the first time. Spice melange, on the other hand, every time that you imbibe it is a completely new different experience. In the book and in all the lore, they always assign different spice names. Like sometimes it tastes like cinnamon, sometimes it tastes like cloves, and the experience is different. Like the spice mutates along with you to give you a new experience every time. So it's never the same thing that you're experiencing.
Interesting.
Um, and that's why like the books kind of and I don't know if later on in the books they go really heavily into it, but like Frank Herbert kind of laid the foundation that it's a living organism, just like it's not like a I mean, even spice that we have today, it's coming from a plant, right? Like some plant, some process that's so even this spice is living, but it's a continually living thing. It's not an inert living thing. It was not like a seed that's dead. It is a live thing, and as you imbibe it, it works with your body and mutates your body, right? So one mutation is the Fremen, the people on Dune who start having blue eyes, right? And in the book, for example, Piter, who's a twisted mentat, he is spice addicted and his eyes are actually blue. Is if he was on Dune, he would be considered a Fremen. But he's never been to Dune, so he's not Fremen, but his eyes are blue like the Fremen because of the amount of spice he consumes, right? In the
Yeah.
case of the space navigators, they're completely mutated head to toe because they just live in a spice cloud all the time, and they're like folding space and time, so their body is already being affected by that operation, right?
Yeah.
Um, so the mutations are not like uh, uh, they're not through like any discovery of a crazy material or opening of a portal to some sort of like other science fiction generally have. The most mutations are because mainly kind of centered around the spice. There's definitely drug addictions. There are different sorts of drugs out there in the universe. Like there's a drug I remember one of the barons, Master of Arms, has it, where it's like a it creates like it the high is based on musical notes. Like the person who's high on this drug is experiencing an intense musical uh, performance in his mind when he's on the drug, right? Um, so, but for most aspects, it is just a lot of political intrigue on a planetary scale and intraplanetary, right? Like houses are minor houses, major houses sometimes have an access to the entire planet, and when you say planet, like even for example, uh, Lachesis, which is our planet, right? Um, like it's a water planet, but the amount of land on it is limited. So it's not like it's got billions of people. It's got millions of people and a minor house running over it. No other house is interested in it until they found something of some use, and there's just enough people to mine it, right? So that's why it's more of that. It's like intraplanetary uh, uh, intrigue and role play and machinations of trying to like win resources or disrupt somebody else's resources or operations and stuff like that.
It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Now the spacing guild is interesting also like because they're folding space and time, and they do use vapor wave, which is in our game, for like which in most science fiction does this, right? Like there is inner system travel and then interstellar travel, right? Like for example, the Fate system where our planets and moons are is one system, one solar system in thousands of solar systems as part of this whole universe. Moving from solar system to solar system, so into interstellar travel, yeah, they do fold space and time, right? Which would be same as say calling it FTL, like faster than light, or like
But
warp
even
travel.
different than that because no time passes whatsoever.
No time,
Right.
exactly, no time passes. But what I was getting at is, in all science fiction, when they engage FTL drives, whether it's warp, whether it's other name for warp or FTL, or even folding space and time, it's generally done for the macro travel, star to star, right?
Hmm.
But within the star system, like say for example, somebody came from from say like what is it? What's the closest star to us on in actual our universe? Uh,
You
the,
mean
Mm,
in
the,
real life?
yeah, in real life, I think there's a star that's about like some
Isn't
Alpha
that
Centauri. Alpha
yeah?
Centauri. Say somebody from Alpha Centauri came here, right? They would say, for example, fold space and time to get to say Pluto or say Neptune. But once from Neptune, if they want to come to Earth, you don't want to fold space and time because there are just too many objects within the system moving. So that's where you start using what some people would call like impulse engines. Like in Star Trek, for example, it's warp travel and then impulse engines. Impulse engines is always for like short distance travel, planet to planet, moon to moon, right? So that's where our fuel vapor wave comes in. But interstellar travel is where they fold space and time using the spice. The interesting things the book talks about and the movie kind of shows is that these are freaking massive. Like, I mean, there's nothing like when you see it in space, it looks like a small moon orbiting your planet. That's how big these spaceships are. Um, because when they're transporting things, it's like bulk transport. You know, they could be carrying an entire military organization along with billions of boxes of spice and then millions of goat meat and like rice and wheat and it's massive.
can I
Um,
interject that I love the
yeah,
design of all the spaceships in Dune because they're not aerodynamic because why the fuck would they be?
exactly.
Right? So everything else almost is like X-wing fighter. Oh, that's very
Yeah.
aerodynamic.
Yeah.
Why? It doesn't
Hmm.
make any sense. It could be a ball, right? Which some of those like the later stuff in Dune, those ships, those no what are they called? No ships, I think. So they're basically designed where prescience can't find them or something like that. But they're like circles.
Oh,
They're
circles. I
circles.
see.
Yeah. So it's pretty great. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but so that's where the Spacing Guild comes in because they're the only ones who can help people travel in space, and they have maintained that, almost to a point of what do you call like they run their own espionage, counter espionage apparatus to make sure nobody else can fly in space apart from them, because that's how they control everybody else.
Now,
The Bene
supposedly
Gesserit,
there are people who do it, but it's like risky business, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, super risky business. You don't want to get fucked by. Yeah, the space Inc. doesn't give
And
a shit.
the funny thing is that what does that mean? That means if you want to do something somewhere, the Space Inc. is going to know about where you're going and what you're doing. So if they don't want you to do that, well, you're not going to do it because they're not going to take you, right?
Yeah, and they make so much money that, like, sometimes just giving them money is not enough. Like, there has to be something more than just money. They're like, yeah, so what? Like, I mean, they, like in some scenarios, just money doesn't work with them because they make enough, right? Like that they're getting paid from somewhere else for something else. So, and the Bene Gesserit are the most really interesting, because, like, what Ted was talking about with the eugenics is, the book does a good way of talking is is kind of what we are experiencing today on our planet, right? Like you have humans, you have 8 billion humans, but you sometimes question, like, are they really human? Like, are they using all of their mental faculties to apply themselves in their lives, right? And that's what the Bene Gesserit realized, and in some ways, even other systems talk about it, right? Like for if you think about the 40K empire, right? That's basically what it's like. It's like humanity became so big that it started crushing itself through its weight of existence, right?
Right.
And the Bene Gesserit, they know that's what's going to happen, is that if if they do not, like, if they believe that if you just let nature take its course, nature is nature doesn't give a fuck about humans. Nature doesn't give a fuck about any individual organism within itself, right? It's just letting things play out. It's absolutely fine if an organism just grows like a virus. Like, nature is not trying to save a virus. If a virus just takes over a host body, destroys it, and then has nowhere else to spread, the virus just ends up killing itself, right? So you can say, but isn't virus a part of nature? So why isn't nature doing something to make sure that the virus survives? But that's not, like, nature is not there to ensure the survival of one species versus the other. It's like a free for all um, chaos petri dish that that it's just there.
Yeah.
Benny Gesserit realized this, and they know that the only way for the human race to survive is if they ensure that certain aspects of humanity, which can only be transferred through genes and through the intermingling of genes and through progeny, survive down the ages into the eons, right? And that is why they are into the from the eugenics is basically they're into breeding, right? What they're trying to do is set up houses and heirs of houses with women and men in such a way that they know that, okay, this duke, that count, this king, that emperor has these aspects, genetically has these aspects. Now, if this person meets with that person and they have a child, this child will then have these additional aspects, right? um, yes, they have an ultimate goal to create this ultimate Messiah, but they know that in the process of reaching the Messiah, overall they can ensure that the human gene pool is pretty strong, right? Now, some people will like, oh, but there's no different from what we do today to dogs, right? Like, dogs, if you look as a species on this planet, is a completely eugenics program that we have run hand in hand with everybody else around us, right?
That's
Like,
true
the
eugenics
problem,
too,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's true eugenics, and the problem is we have been absolute fucking fuckheads about it because we don't give a shit about the survivability of the dogs, because we go for things like looks and cuteness and this and
Hmm.
that and workability, and and that's why you have, like, some dogs are so deeply inbred that they are born with maladies that are going to show themselves in. It's like a ticking time bomb. In 7 years this dog is going to die because it has this thing already in it, genetically predisposed to, say, hip dysplasia, genetically predisposed to, say, encephalitis or brain injuries or eye things or whatever. Like, it's so we've done that. We are doing it. It's just that we're doing it to dogs, and we're like, oh, they're lesser species. So we're like, but if you do it to humans, we're like, oh, whatever.
Well, I
fucking
mean, even
hypocrisy
even
all.
humans do it in to a certain extent, but no one controls it.
Ex-
It's like, okay, you meet somebody and they're, oh god, they look a certain way, they are smart,
Exactly.
they do these certain things, so you're picking them based on outward. You're not saying, well, that's genetics, but really it's genetics, right? So we do that on a daily basis. We pick what we want, based on whatever it is. It's so
Correct. And in the case of Benny Gesserit, like they have taken like they have trained themselves. First of all, they're extremely well trained women that have understand like the mind body interaction. Like they completely control their mind. They completely control their body to a point where they can choose to procreate, not procreate, and procreate like a certain like either girl childs or boy childs. They have that much control, and then they're able to extend that control outwards. That's what, for example, a very powerful Bene Gesserit tool is called the voice. The voice is basically they're able to modulate their voice to affect your brain and body chemistry to react to that, right? So the way you think of the voice is they give you a command, and it's not like your mind is processing the command really, but it is given an input that it reflexively reacts to, right? It's like you're not consciously reacting. Your body is reflexively reacting because you, for example, in this new movie when it starts, they're saying, "Give me like ask for this glass of water to me." You know how to give a glass of water to someone, anyone. It's a physical action that's you can do it thoughtlessly. Your body knows what to do is pick up a glass and hand it to someone. So now I can make your mind and your body to reflexively give it to me even without you thinking whether you want to give it to me, whether you like to give it to me, whether you don't like to give it to me, whether you're forced to give it. No, you just cut through all of that BS. They force your mind to just reflexly kick your body into action. Your body reacts and you get it done. So that's the voice. And they can do it because they're able to control themselves, and then they figure out how to control others because they can control themselves, right? And that's what that famous litany of fear is all about, that they recite to themselves, which is basically training, is because if they can calm the mind, it then leads to like relaxing the entire body and then focusing purely in the current moment, right? Like and seeing the current moment for truly what it is, without any additional like labels and judgments and all of that. Like it's pure computational thought.
yeah.
Like in some ways they're their own mentats, but they're not. They don't
More
do
more of like
things
a watching the behaviors of others over
yes,
like
logical reasoning. They don't do
logic and
pure
math.
logic.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
like
that's the
in the
differentiation.
book, when they're at that dinner, Jessica's watching people and suddenly getting their tells and stuff like, oh, this person is actually a Harkonnen spy. So
Yeah.
got the real McCoy, got the shade down.
Ooh,
Uh,
you can only see the
just
goatee.
yeah.
Oh, it's not picking up my other camera. No, I gotta switch that camera. One of the things that I had always loved about this is, and that I was always looking forward to about Dune was like the creativity and the lore. I knew it was like really rich, and I knew it was really, tantalizing to me, and I wanted to know more about it. And I knew the first movie, or even back then, it wasn't going to do it justice. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
it's true.
yeah, because it was a movie, and it was should have been like a miniseries, I think. Just the books. I haven't read the books though either. So
Yeah, I
No, it's
remember
true.
I
Yeah.
remember like in my teens when I first read Dune, and of course I was familiar with Star Trek and Star Wars and basically, and then I read Dune and I was like, "Wow, this is so different. This is like that's the surface level stuff, right? That's the
Mhm.
surface level sci-fi, and this is the brain sci-fi stuff, right?"
Yeah.
and I felt that it was very interesting. And I guess I didn't probably at the time understand all the themes involved, just because I remember when I first started reading a lot back then. God, I haven't read anything besides a role playing game forever. But anyway, back then, I was like, oh, there's gonna have to be a theme. It's just a book, it's just a story. But then you start understanding like what kind of the themes of things are, particularly like books. And you see like there's so many themes for this book, and one of the big one is uh, don't trust cults of personality, and like you see a lot of these people today talking about the movie and totally not understanding what it's even a fucking about,
Oh
right? They're
yeah.
like, oh, the white savior Paul Atreides, and first of all, he's not necessarily white. Second of all, he's not the savior. He's the complete opposite of the savior. Actually, he uses the Fremen to his own devices completely. He's 15 when the book starts, and yeah, he sees a future where the Fremen go out into the galaxy and have this religious war against everybody, and he cries. But he also, and this is shown in the movie, he also, when Jessica's like, yeah, we got to get him off world, but what does he decide to do? He decides to stay there because he knows his best chance at revenge against the Harkonnens and the Emperor is to have the Fremen behind him, because his father was correct when he said, they have desert power, and that's what he knows, that he needs to control the spice to change the galaxy, and so he does this, and he knows the best way to do it is with the Fremen. He chooses this path, right? He knows that this could happen, and he chooses this path anyway because he wants to fuck those who killed his father.
Yeah,
He's not the savior. So
no, yeah,
people
exactly.
do
He's
not
not.
understand,
Yeah,
right, the
yeah.
theme of the book, right? So
And I think yeah, that's the sad part is because they just go by the, oh yeah, he's white, but actually, so this is something that a new movie that the old movie did something which is interesting with the book did, right? Because the book has there is the person talking, right? So like say Paul says something, and then the book says this is what Paul's thinking, which is just
yeah,
as important because in the thinking aspect is where you can see that this person has noticed certain things about you, right? So the Bene Gesserit are really, really good at reading people, like truly deeply reading people. They can read people to a point where they take the person as a as an entity and they decode it. It's like say if you got an encrypted email and you decode it to read its content. That's how the Bene Gesserit treat a person. They think it's an encoded and then they look for patterns like this is a pattern, that's a pattern, 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 pattern. Oh, this is who you are, right? Because they have seen so many people and so many patterns that they can apply it over and over to other people and say, okay, this person is a subversive, this person is an Harkonnen, this person is an Atreides, this person is lying, this person is actually telling the truth, this person is scared of something, right? Um, the new movie doesn't do that. It
it's
doesn't. It
hard,
doesn't. There isn't. Yeah, it's hard, but
especially
they
for a
didn't do it.
movie to have inner monologues. It's just yeah,
I mean, yeah, they didn't even try to put it as a like a voiceover, right? At
yeah,
post production. However, if you watch the faces closely, you can see that they have read the books and they are emoting it on their face. Like their face says they have intuited something about this person or something else, and that's why they are good actors. You see, that's the problem. You cannot preclude a person who's a good actor because oh, he's white, and if I put him against this backdrop, he
yeah.
looks like a white savior. That in itself is racist and stupid, right?
Well, I mean, what do
He
you
is a
do? I
great
mean,
actor.
like, okay, you look in the books, and there's only three actually descriptions of people's skins, and they're all the same. They're all olive, right? So it means to me that in the year 10,000 we fucked each other so much that we all kind of look olive, right? Which is probably what will happen, right? Nobody's
Yes,
going to be able to say, "Oh, I'm white, I'm black, I'm tan." You're just going to be a,
no.
a mixture, right? And
I
like,
mean, it's thousands of planets in
yeah,
hundreds of systems, and it's all human. Like you have to like the sheer number of humanity that's out there. We have outgrown viruses. Like if we are 8 billion on this planet now, apply it to 8 billion times 1,000. That's how many humans at least are out there in the year 10,000, right? We have grown to 8 billion in the last what? 100 to, no, maybe say I would say 200 to 300 years,
Hmm.
10,000 fucking years from now, right? So, um,
Yeah.
but
And you can live
uh,
until you're like 300 or 400 years old.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
I'll be
So,
right back.
uh,
yeah.
uh,
Yeah, so it's interesting. I mean, it's kind of off topic, but it is interesting to understand. Like it's like so we're not that way. So somebody of some race has to play Paul Atreides, whatever, right?
it
I mean, is it going to be white? Is it going? It really doesn't matter.
doesn't it,
But
it doesn't really matter,
yeah,
and I think this they've done a really good job. Like there is diversity everywhere. Like I just I don't know. I just find that like just like going. I mean, it's basically somebody wanting to write something about to pull down something, right?
oh
These
yeah, I
it's
mean,
most like that's
yeah,
what everything has become nowadays. Where
yeah,
I want to have a
we know that.
viewpoint counter to yeah. I want to have a viewpoint counter to everybody's viewpoint. So this is what I'm going to write about. You know, I mean, they found fault with Lord of the Rings. Like, if people can find fault with Lord of the Rings, then what is
Oh
Dune?
yeah, because there's no strong female characters or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Except there's
So
except there's Eowyn, who is probably, I don't know.
yeah, she takes out a fucking
The Witch
lich.
King. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, exactly. Oh, and what about Galadriel? Oh no, no, she's not a like
Yeah,
no,
she's like
no.
the most
He's
powerful
just
elf in Middle Earth,
yeah,
but okay.
yeah, but no, sure, no, no.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting, right? I find it kind of funny. I like that Quinn's idea.
Uh-huh.
So that he's actually black, and he was actually responding to one of these, and he's like, "This is the most nonsensical thing I've ever seen." Right? It's kind of puppeting what I've said. Well, I'm puppeting him, I guess, but
Yeah.
yeah. First of all, Paul is not necessarily white, probably not. And he's
It's
not the
yeah,
savior. He's not their
yeah.
savior. He's
It,
not.
and that's something I was going back towards the book is that so the book I also find changes every time you read it because you as a reader have changed.
Mhm.
Your worldviews have changed. You have
Yeah,
experienced more of the world. You're kind of seeing maybe you become more cynical, maybe you become less cynical, maybe so you see everything from each time you're seeing a different perspective
yeah,
because it's a very human story, right? Yeah, when you first read it, you're only looking at it from Paul's perspective, so you're thinking, oh, Paul's a hero because he's had so much adversity put against him, and he rises above it, and he throws back the Harkonnens. But then you realize, like even when you think about all of the Duke's interactions in the book, yeah, he is evil, but his evil is based on his rules, right? Like he also says, like he does not like to have killed the Duke because the Duke is royalty. You don't kill royalty. You don't kill like he still believes the Duke is like him. It's just that it's Stanley. It is because it is the vendetta. They have to be taken out, right? Even when he's doing it, he's like, yeah, I don't want to do this, but I have to, right?
yeah,
It's what I have, what I'm, and it's a very interesting perspective, right? Um, even when you think about the Fremen, or you think about like Liet Kynes, like she's stuck between the Emperor and the Fremen. She wants to make Dune a paradise. Actually, Paul promises her he's going to make it a
hmm,
paradise, and then in the end he realizes, and that's why I keep going back to the Sadukar. He realizes the Emperor's power comes from the Sadukar, and the Sadukar's power comes from the fact that they live on a hell planet, right? The
yeah,
only way, I mean, like think about even today's day and age. How do you create, you know, uh, people of extremely good fighting capabilities because you put them through hell,
yeah. They live in
right? Look at
Dagestan. That's how.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
like the
exactly.
the best fighters, MMA fighters are from Dagestan. That's
Yeah,
not a
why? Why?
coincidence, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah. If you see Dagestan, you realize that yeah, it is a harsh living. It prepares you. Everything in life is a luxury, and when everything in life is a luxury, you do not take it for granted. You respect and you cherish everything. So you are fighting for something, right?
mm,
And but when you realize that hey, if I make Arrakis a paradise, then the Fremen, who are even more vicious than the Sadukar, who are known as the greatest, most elite fighting force in the universe, oh no, hell no! I'm not going to make Arrakis until my machinations are done, until my
Okay.
my jihad is run fully, I am not going to make it a paradise
And like
ever, because
you think about that too, and you think about if I do that, and then there's no more spice, what control do I have over people? The only
exactly,
control I
none.
have over people is having the spice.
Yep. Because your planet at that point is no different from any other planet in the entire thousands of planets.
Yeah, you would be sitting. You would
A-
be sitting on Arrakis, not going anywhere. Is what would be happening,
exactly. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah. Exactly.
so,
Yeah. So and that shows it that eventually even the most even any messiah eventually has to contend with their own goals and desires, and that's where all messiahs
yeah, I like that
fall
he's the
flat.
Messiah chosen one, but in the books he's actually not the chosen one. He's a
No
mistake, right?
mistake.
He's a
Yeah.
complete mistake, and he's not the chosen one at all. Yeah, it's just not understanding what you're reading.
Yeah. No.
You know,
Yeah. It's just perspective.
yeah, it's interesting though. Oh, let's see what else. I don't know if Rogue's come back or yet or not, but
Oh, I am here.
he's back. Yeah.
Do
So hit us with some
uh,
questions. We've just been blabbing.
yeah. Um, about the families, I missed all the talks when
Yeah.
you guys.
So the general gist is that there's so you're in this system called the Fate system, and there's three moons and one gas giant. That's all that's in there. And the gas giant is called I'd have to look. The colloquial name is God's Wrath. Um, three generations prior, the patriarch of the family was some sort of you know, plantologist, and so he went there to check out this planet. Primarily because it was found, and two of the three moons were terraformed by what they think is the thinking machines at the time. So thousands of years ago. They don't know why. Nothing was significant was found on them, except there is on both moons there are settlements, human settlements. So at some point in time, people lived there. They do not when they were found. Um, Conducting research of the system found that um, there was this potential mineral, whatever, on the planet, but it was very highly subject to it's highly unstable, and so it was highly unstable. So they could not use it for anything, and then eventually they found on one of the other moons by another of the brothers a mineral that could be added to the compound from the planet that actually made it stable, so it could be useful. So the guild navigators got a hold of this, and so that guy, the main guy, they made him a nascent house, and so their fortunes started changing. So he had three sons, controlled the three different moons. Um, and one of your moon is like a ocean kind of paradise. There's not very much land on it at all. It has nothing actually technically to do with the mining operations. All your mining operations are actually set up on mining bases around the planet. This gas giant, so it's not too comfortable there on those. Then the next one is kind of like a barren cold world, which is where the mineral comes from, that can be added to the fuel to help stabilize it. And then the third is more of like an agricultural world. They make some bullshit there. You have, and then what happens is that he dies, and he doesn't because there's animosity between the brothers, particularly the one that lives in the barren hellscape and the one that lives in this nice water planet. He doesn't. They feud, so he doesn't actually leave anybody as heirs. So the house major decides that they'll split up all three of the brothers into their own houses, and they are required to work together to make the vaporware wave, and that's that. So that was three generations ago, and this animosity has continued to build over these generations. Um, and But you have to at the same time work together to create the wave for the guild highliners to move. Now there are other sources of fuel, but not as good as this. Um, so once a month or so, the guild highliners fold space into your system and come pick up your shipments and then leave. Um, any disruption in the production of this vapor wave would be seen very negatively by probably it could reach the emperor's level even, because if the guild highliners complain enough. So that's very important. But you guys don't like each other so much. There's been small bouts of conflict here and there, and then so that's the general political situation in your system. Um, as a house in general, you have other problems. Your secondary domain is an espionage ring of courtesans. There's pleasure islands on your planet or moon. You send them out other places. They can be purchased, but the general gist of it is you collect secrets doing this. Pillow talk and such. And this is a real problem because the Bene Gesserit, this is kind of their domain, and they don't like this. Obviously, the Bene Gesserits are smart enough to figure this out. I don't think that anybody would have any illusions that it would be a secret. However, keeping the Bene Gesserit away has been a priority, and you have been able to do that so far, primarily based on um, your contributions of vaporwave fuel to the guild, who has backed you up on this, and your house major. Well, the problem is that Mama Zwystrom is not producing any babies, and so because the Emperor and other house majors want to keep things all nice and calm, they have ordered you to take a consort, or Walter Peck to take a consort so she can have a baby. Well, that's obviously slips Bene Gesserit, so she's there and by order, so you can't turn her away anymore. Well, everybody probably assumes that she is there to infiltrate your spy ring and shut it down. So that's kind of like this conflict between Slip and everybody else, that will happen, I'm sure. Um, what else?
Between me, I'm Walter Peck's brother in the game. Walter Peck is the first brother. I'm the younger brother. And if Walter Peck dies, and I get the house, so there's
Mm,
that kind of level of intrigue going on over there as to
mm,
like if he gets a child, then I'm not the heir anymore. But at the same time, I want the house to succeed because us becoming more powerful means we can survive, right? And my own thing is we want to destroy the Malakoffs, which are kind of like cousins. I mean,
Yeah, the Malakoffs are
cousins.
the main rival, the ones that have the mineral and the barren planet. So
Correct. So the issue here is that the Malakoffs make the mineral, we mine the gas giant to pull the gas, and then the two get combined to make the stable fuel. The fuel has to flow just like the spice has to flow. The fuel has to flow at whatever cost. If we fuck around too much and disrupt anything, the bigger houses will just come, the routers kill us, throw us out, and they'll install somebody else that can keep the whole place running, right?
mm.
So
Okay.
this is where this Dune system. This is why open warfare is almost never allowed because it always disrupts commerce, right? It disrupts all the plans everybody else is having and where everybody else is moving. Like we are just smaller pawns and there are greater houses and they have their own things going on. And if, say, for example, one house is trying to attack some other house and they want the Highlanders to be somewhere else, and we suddenly cause a problem and cause shortage of fuels, and the fuel prices jump up and costs of transportation jump up, everybody's going to come down on us. And basically, they'll annihilate us. Like a major house annihilating a minor house is no big deal. They'll just like we were made into a house, they'll find somebody else, give it to them, and make them into a house.
Yeah.
But like a major house being annihilated is a bit of a deal, and a great house being annihilated is a huge deal. So that's why as you get more and more power, you are more and more secure automatically. So that is something that we as a house are also trying to do. We also want to try and potentially reverse engineer or figure out how we can get that mineral so we can completely cut the Malakoffs off. right? Because they're on a barren moon. Like if we don't need them and we own all the mining operations, screw them, right? Like you just basically seize them out. There's no way they can get anything done off their planet, right? And they will be trying to see if they can get their own mining operations up onto the planet, right? Or trying to take over our mining operations. So yeah, that's where it becomes like it's everything's like on a like very delicate spider's web that you are like playing with, you know. Uh,
Hmm.
Awesome.
and if you, yeah,
So
you
I'm
play too hard
wondering,
that you might get trapped in your own web. That's the problem.
yeah, I'm wondering about my character, where I'm gonna put him. Is he gonna be related to you guys? What should I do with him?
I mean, he could. I mean, you could do it as simply as he's just a house servant, and he has been for a while. You could do that simply,
Right.
and then come up some with some sort of cool background for him. Like maybe he was maybe he's from the Malakoff planet. I think that's called Aprothos, and
Atropos.
Atropos, and
Yeah.
maybe he did not like the Malakoffs for some reason. Maybe he is a Malakoff. That would take some
Okay.
trust, but maybe he is a offspring of one of the not heirs, but like the great uncles or some shit like that. Just thinking of other things. There's also the agricultural planet that you could be from, maybe if, but I don't know how interesting that is necessarily.
Kind of like that idea about the Malakoffs, and like I'm trying to prove my place or something, maybe.
Yeah, you could be, or maybe. There actually the original idea we had with Zypher was that he was actually a Malakoff and he was run off because he tried to assassinate the head Malakoff and take over, and that he was kind of run off because of that, and he had one place to go, and that was with with the Zwystroms, and so he went to the Zwystroms. He's not really that trusted. That's his trust is it's like do I trust him or not? Who knows, and that sort of thing. And then he was the heir too. But we didn't do that for him, so we could actually apply that to you in some way,
Yeah.
that maybe you were a you tried to assassinate the leader of the Malakoff. Maybe you were one of his sons. I have said that the Lord Malakoff is actually would be the peer of Alaric's father. So he's actually a generation older than Zypher and Walter Peck. So you could be actually from that generation that you tried to actually kill your father, who is a very old man, his life extended by spice, particularly, and it didn't work. Maybe you were maybe try to kill maybe you're the third brother and try to kill the two brothers in front of you or something like that, and they're probably more militant, honestly. And
Or maybe Rogue is more militant. So
yeah,
this is what I'm thinking is if you take that story a little further, say Rogue has plans on how he could potentially destroy Zwystrom, right? But maybe it's a little too brash. Maybe Father Malakoff didn't like it so much. He is older. He wants to be wiser. He's too scared to put Rogue's actions into power, right?
mm,
But Rogue gets frustrated. Like I can take these guys out in a shot, in a single shot. We just have to like bear a little, difficulty for a little time, but we can completely take them out. The dad doesn't listen to it, you know. So Rogue tries to do a coup where he tries to kill the dad and overtake the whole house so he can put his plans into motion. Doesn't go through, and then he realizes like these guys will not stand a chance if they don't take a strong approach, and he decides to defect to us, saying, "Okay, if this house is not going to survive, I need to survive. If I join with Zwystrom, and they follow my plans on how to reverse destroy this house, then Zwystrom
Yeah.
survives, I survive with Zwystrom, and we can all ascend together."
I like that, and it could make sense with my asset too.
which
Because
one?
he's just the
I
strategist, right?
His
yeah, I'm a
asset he's talking about.
Oh, asset. I see. I see.
yeah, I'm a strategist, but I took the assassin asset.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, you can generate assets on the fly too by spending momentum and stuff, like we were talking about this earlier.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But yeah, you can do a whole bunch of stuff, and that would make sense. It would just be just the dynamic would be probably distrust pretty much constantly from everybody else to you, so you would
right.
have to expect that, right? But yeah, I don't know that the Zwystroms would overly like trust you. Maybe they do to some extent, but who knows?
No, I think that, but it opens that role play, right? Like
Yeah.
if
Hmm.
you explain to the Zwystroms how you had completely scoped their destruction, and you start showing them how you had scoped it, those are all key avenues that we can then start to like fix about
Yeah,
our exposure, right? So that's one way, because you had scoped it all out. Like you knew step by step, because you're a strategist, you're a mental strategist, you knew step by step, like a Piter de Vries, how to completely undermine and destroy our house. Just that your
Mhm.
family did not believe in your abilities or your capabilities and did not want to take a big move because you didn't believe in it, and it forced your hand to try and take over the house. That didn't work. They're like, okay, fuck it. If I stay with these, it's like being attached to a sinking ship. You believe in its current form, Malakov is going to sink and destroy itself, or Zweistrom is going to come in and swoop and destroy them. So you move your allegiance to us, show us how we are weak, make us stronger, and show us how they are weak, and then that's how we can build trust in the game, I think.
yeah,
And eventually you can still be bloodthirsty and realize, okay, I have their allegiance now. I can undermine them from the inside and completely fuck them over,
Yeah.
and be a true one lord. So that's also open at the end of the day. So yeah, that's why there's always going to be distrust, right? So there's I think distrust is going to be there, just general overall, right?
Yeah, I
No,
can't imagine Walter Peck trusting anyone, right?
yeah.
So, which makes sense, right? If you're a lord
He's a
and
ruler, yeah.
yeah, who do you trust? You don't trust anybody really.
So to give an example again, in the books, the movie doesn't show it so much, but in the books, there is uh, like somebody like Walter Peck's character or the Duke or the Baron. It is a very very big thing to allow anybody within like certain distance of their body, and then certain distance of their body again, and of their like it is a very core few set. So it might start with him making sure that you're always like 100 feet away from him at all times. Any closer, and it's a sign of aggression, right? So that's the thing, is like,
Yeah.
because it's all about, like, because it's like, also if you look at the tech,
Well,
if you look at,
it is shown in the movie when Stilgar comes in, right? Yeah.
correct, yes,
Yeah.
yes, Gunny Halleck loses his mind in the new movies. Have you watched the new movie, Rogue?
no,
No, okay. uh but the thing is, it's a very interesting mixture of new tech, old tech, right? That's one more thing characteristic about Dune. it
It's
is
probably
it is
40K
not,
30 years, 30,000 years before, right?
yeah, so it's like there is las guns, but it reacts with shields to a point where it's almost like an atomic bomb going off, right?
yeah,
The shields are pretty strong, but the shields are not strong enough where a they call it like the slow blade penetrates the shield. Like if you move your blade slowly, the shield, because the shield, it's so interesting. The shield is semi-porous because it covers you fully, but it has to be porous enough for you to be able to breathe through it, right? That's something
yeah,
that actually no science fiction talks about. Oh, you have a shield on. How is air going
uh-huh.
in and out if the shield is completely impenetrable, right?
Hmm.
No, it's not. There is air going through, which means that the shield is like vibrating, which means that if you move your blade through it appropriately and slowly enough, you will penetrate the shield.
Yeah,
So their projectile weapons, they're called slow slug projectile weapons. So it would be a projectile weapon, it would shoot the slug, but the slug is slow. It actually is almost like a jackhammer that slowly moves against the shield to completely penetrate it and get to the target. And the
yeah,
new movies do a good point of showing that, but
Mm.
so that's why, like, because of this old tech, new tech, it's there's a lot to do with like keeping distance. Like, you don't let anybody too close to you because they could potentially stick you with a knife or stick you with a poison dart or whatever before you have time to activate your shield. And you can't keep your shield active all the time, you know. For example, the book talks about this a lot. Like, every house at every dinner table, they have poison sniffers, like, always hovering above. Like, Suspenser is a commonly used technology. So lights are always like floating in space, like in mid-air, right?
Hmm.
And they have these suspensive technologies. They have poison sniffers that sniff the drink, sniff the food, and at any point anything can be poisoned. You don't know who's trying to kill you. It might even be that freaking, the Clothlow is the like the agrarian planet, like Shadesh, who's the third brother in there, who's never showed his face. You don't know what the fuck he's up to. He might just suddenly want to come and poison you, right? The Emperor might want to poison you. Like, you have no clue who wants to kill you at any given moment. So you don't trust anyone, anything. Everything is always tested, and so. Uh, there'll be like, I think like this kind of storyline gives you like, it's not like you'll be more distrusted, like you'll be little more distrusted than say me,
Yeah.
but you'll be just as distrusted as the Benny Gesserit, right?
I
So
I don't even know if that's true. He might be distrusted less than you because he doesn't really. I mean, okay,
true, that's that's
maybe
true.
equal because like he's not going to take over Zwystrom if he kills Zwystrom. Well, but he might. I mean, that might be something from Malakoff to him. I don't know. Who knows, right? It could
Correct,
be.
correct, exactly. But I think, yeah, like maybe, yeah, in the order of things, like, yeah, Walter Peck would certainly not trust me at all whatsoever with anything, right? But he's kind of forced to trust me because um, I'm like the big house mentat, right? Like, there is that familial connection. There is a reason why it's like we need each other. The thing is, I need Walter Peck because he's the one who's attracting all the attention. Like, that's something that we're talking about, right? Like, before you joined, was the reason the Atreides get fucked in the book is because they become very popular in the Landstar. They become this big house, very honorable, very righteous, full of justice, and everybody wants you is following them. Everybody is looking up to them as the example. The Emperor gets jealous and wants to take them out. That's how this whole thing starts.
Hmm.
So in my case, yeah, my brother Alaric is the one on the throne. Yeah, look at him. Direct all your energies and enemies and assassins at him, right? Not at me, right? But I will eventually want the throne, or I want the house and stuff like that. So
So
yeah,
he
there
has a
is.
kid, and then it's not yours.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah, exactly. And then there's this Bene Gesserit witch shows up. Not
And she's
only is
not
she
gonna
here to
let you
give.
kill her kid,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, she's not gonna let me kill a kid. And the thing is, I can't kill her because she's Bene Gesserit. And not only is she going to fuck with the line of my line, but she's also going to fuck my spy operation. So, like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, that's not good. That's not good for you.
Yeah.
Any way you look at it. So
So for the
the question I have a question for you in DM Zypher. We'll talk about that. Just
Cool.
something came to mind, but yeah, yeah. So any other questions? I guess I think we went through kind of. I mean, there's probably lots of things about Dune itself that there's because there's a lot of nuance and just a lot of shit, but like particularly like our house situation, what's going on. Prankster's playing an envoy. He's kind of the uncle. He's an uncle on a female side of I think Alucard, which is their father, and then Raz is just a Mentat treasurer, I guess. So I don't really know anything about his background or anything about him. So
I so I wouldn't want to carry the last name of them. What were they called?
Malakoff.
Malakoff.
Malakoff. I
Mhm.
wouldn't want to bring that name with me, right? Or or should I
Um,
keep the last name?
I think that's up to you as a character. Like, what would he?
Like, would I make up my own to try to like, like a Jon Snow type thing, or like, uh,
Maybe you could maybe I don't know. Are you trying to hide it? What's the purpose? I guess.
yeah, I don't know if if I was trying to build trust with Zystrom, I think I would try to hide the fact that my last name was.
You're trying to do this in secret. That you're like you don't want them to know you're a Malakoff.
Well, I think that they would already know,
Yeah, I
that
think
I'm
so.
Babas
Probably.
Malakoff.
Yeah,
But like,
just
you
not to
know,
flaunt it in their face, kind of thing.
right? Like maybe he would change his name just as a to keep that out of the air at all, or
Yeah.
Yes, yes, that'd be cool. Yeah, because externally, I mean, you don't want to let anybody else know that Zweiström let an enemy in, right?
Right, right.
Um,
Strangers that would
Obviously,
come. Yeah,
we should kind of show weakness outside of this, right? Like, oh,
yeah,
they let Malakoff in, even though he might be a turncoat, they still let him in. Like, why didn't they just capture him, extract the information, and kill him, right?
right.
As
Right.
opposed to letting him walk around the court, right? So does that mean they're weak, that they do not have the will to? Yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yes.
And
You could
I'm
you
imagining,
yeah, go ahead.
uh, I'm imagining he's done something at least to make them at least trust him for the entrance. So far. Um,
Hmm.
uh,
Like
I
Hey,
guess.
Cypher
yeah,
was saying, like maybe you said, well, this is a exploit you have in your defenses, and you need to shore it up, and then their people look at it and they're like, yeah, that's true actually. So, that
Yeah,
sort of thing
yeah, that would be
makes
cool.
sense.
and something to think about that is it could be that his arrival is in some way connected to finally Canley being
Hmm.
allowed, right? Maybe he did something that's between you guys to talk offline, but maybe he did something before leaving, apart from attempting the life or whatever. Maybe he did something else that you can use, and which we don't know. Like nobody knows, and maybe he doesn't tell us either, right? Like we are always thinking, oh, something else happened. That's why
You're gonna
Canley
be
is
there in
allowed.
that first session, right? On the 22nd Rogue.
Yeah.
Gonna be that. I got something.
Okay.
I got something for
Cool.
you.
I got
Cool.
something for your ass.
Did you X? Did you like the new movie? Or
Oh, dude, I love the new movie.
okay, cool.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
to see it.
I would say still you need to watch the old movie as well as new movie because, like I was telling
He
Ted.
already saw the old movie. We were talking about how bad the Shield CGI was, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
In
come
the
on, it's
Wheaties box.
1984. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's 84,
yeah,
dude.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
Yeah,
84.
yeah,
But for
definitely.
example, like the new movie doesn't do as much justice to like Fighter DeVries, like the
Yeah.
Mentat for the Harkonnens, right? Um,
But
I,
neither did the
I,
old movie, really. I mean,
oh no, the old movie did a lot for Fighter DeVries.
well,
Like,
better, yes, I would agree.
yeah, I
But
mean, Fighter that like the actor is great, first of
yeah,
all.
Brad Dorf
Yeah,
or
Brad.
whatever his name.
Yeah, he's a great actor, and I don't know. Like in the new movie, you really don't get a sense of how bad the Harkonnens are. Like
Oh,
the
yeah,
old movie,
you don't really.
yeah, the old movie, you can see they are batshit insane.
Yeah,
Like they
Yeah,
do a
but it's
good
almost a
job.
caricature, with like his face, the like the
Yeah, but
overacting stuff, and
correct. But in 1984, that was like holy shit. Like I mean, 1984, dude. This is
dude.
even before the internet was invented. Like, can you
uh,
imagine? Like, oh, did you remember the scene where they're looking at communication and it's like these light signals going through that like
yeah.
that cave, and that's how communication is happening.
Oh, also, just so you know, there's no like FTL communication or anything like that. So
Oh yeah,
it's
correct.
all like couriers, like because they
Yeah,
often talked about like, oh, your courier got like captured or whatever. So it's all like, I got to go tell somebody, I got to go deliver this message. It's like never like call 'em up on the
yeah.
subspace.
That was another thing that hooked me last night was just the Ted talking to me about how the AI, that whole thing, computers and AI, is gone now.
Yeah,
That it's like way in the past that they got
Hmm.
rid of them because of some huge holy war against the machines, right?
correct.
I love that. I love
Yeah,
that whole.
the AI basically started trying to take over, and the humans like rebelled, and there was this huge fucking war, lasted
See,
thousands of years, and
and this guy wrote this. When did he write Dune?
17,
65,
65. Holy
65.
shit.
So he was thinking.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he was a newspaper journalist, and he was doing a story on the ecology of some place in Utah or something like that, and he just turned it into Dune. Yeah,
Cool.
he was anti-politics, and so he used that influence and the influence that he didn't like charismatic leaders and thought that over history they had caused more issues than anything, and he kind of just turned those both into Dune. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was like influenced by like Asimov and that kind of science fiction, that hard science fiction. You can really see it, right? Whereas
Yeah.
whereas like Star Wars particularly is more like a fantasy in
Oh yeah.
space, and Star Trek is, but it's just
It's just too. It's a utopian world,
yeah,
right?
which
It's
is
not. It's
but
a,
this is the very exact opposite of that, right? So
Right. Like Star Trek assumes that somewhere along the way we finally gave up on killing each other,
Yeah.
right? We just gave up
yeah.
on it and we said, okay, let's all work together, right? Like
Yeah.
that in itself, the concept is completely utopian.
There's never been one out that has never happened ever. So,
Ever, right?
so
So,
That
so that's
money
the thing.
doesn't exist. Money
Yeah,
doesn't exist anymore.
yeah,
exist.
That's
right.
that's pretty.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that was a pretty, and it was that we gave up on killing each other, and at the same time, the most stoic and intelligent race on in this entire universe contacted us at that very time,
Right,
right?
right,
Like
of
two
course.
two improbable events happened, and that's how we get Star Trek, right?
Well,
So, I
that I mean
mean,
that really came out of like being the hippie kind of generation of the
yeah,
'60s,
yeah,
as well. But it's kind of
correct,
interesting,
correct.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Because
but
then
I mean,
also the thing is, you're trekking across the stars. Like
yeah,
there is, like it's
right,
not, you're not just warring across the stars. Like
right,
that's why I like the stars. Like
right.
you're just trekking. You're just like, dun 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 dun. I'm taking my starship along. Oh, this is a nice planet. Let's see what it does. It's like,
Yeah. Then Q comes and he's in his mariachi band outfit and it's playing. Like that's fun. It's funny that that's the absolute first episode of TNG, and
I
that's the one.
know.
But that's the one Bo watches, and he's like, "What is this shit?" It's
that's
Oh
so
my
funny.
god.
sad. It's so
Yeah,
sad.
That's true, dude. I was just thinking about this the other day. I turned it on. I was like, man, Star Trek: The Next Generation. I just downloaded this new app. I'm gonna watch it. And then Q shows up at the first episode. I was like, what the fuck?
yeah.
I thought he showed up like
No, it's the
two
very first
seasons.
one.
Yeah. It's just so sad because that character is so annoying. It's so
Slip loves him.
stupid.
Slip like infers that she used to have sex dreams about that guy. She does. Ask her. She'll admit it. It's funny. Or the actor, whatever the actor's name is.
Oh
That's one of
shit.
those guilty pleasures, huh?
I
Oh, shit.
guess. I don't know.
I'm keep this and in some game I'm going to use him as a token just to
yeah.
fuck with her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. But yeah.
Shit.
All right.
Oh man,
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
cool. I hope we gave you enough
Yeah.
uh, food for thought.
Yeah, this is awesome. I can't wait.
Cool.
Yeah,
But
sorry,
have
I'm
a
a,
good
I'm a
night.
bit of a fanboy, so yeah, I just keep
Yeah.
ranting
No, no,
into.
I love it.
Yeah,
Y'all have a good
You
night.
too.
you too, man. Good night.
Later.
That's good.
Cool,
I'm
Ted.
glad.
You want to stop the video or?
Yeah, we can stop. All right. Well, everybody, we will have a couple more of these probably before the game, hopefully. And see you later.